Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 8. Ain't you feeling great, brother? Shouting nostalgia right here at the Turnbuckle Tavern, as you see right behind me and right above my head. I'm good old Mike Belcaster, and joining me as always, the host with the most, the man with the plan.
Live from the No Sale Studios, it's the Tavern ACEFIELD Retro, and we are in episode 8 of 18 here in season 5, the drive-through Saturday night's main event. We're going to make a couple pit stops in the main event. Of course, NBC had the vehicle. It wasn't on Saturday night. They had a Friday night special, 5 of them to be exact. So we're going to cover them. We're going to sprinkle them into all the greatness here. But first and foremost, Mike Belcaster, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Getting adjusted to the new setup here, so part of me for the little technical difficulties. Like, I had no audio when we were playing the video, which is crazy. Usually I'm jamming and rock, doing my Prince Nana to the music, but we're working. We're going good, man. I got a new computer. I'm all set up. We're rocking and rolling.
So what's the story? We getting a new computer, just finally shit out, or did you decide to buy one altogether?
Well, I was hopping on with our good friend Marco, MVP, over for Open Mic. I was recording a new episode with him, and I loaded up, and he couldn't hear me. It was all sound like the CM Punk intro, and I was not trying to cause any pipe bombs. So I ended up using a laptop for that, and the next day just pulled the trigger on a new PC because the old one wouldn't even turn on the morning after. So things happen for a reason. I'm happy. It's a beast of a machine. Pumped to be here for it, and it works. It it's basically a time machine to keep Shot of Nostalgia rolling. So that's what's up.
Well, we couldn't get back in time without the time machine, and RIP to the device that was using you, because that was the OG, man, that got you through all these times.
My baby.
And so many podcasts recorded on it. So we have this new device we're going to make a whole bunch of memories on. But today we're going to be reviewing 3 shows. As I mentioned before, we're going to litter in these main events that are taking place not on Saturday. And of course, we're going to start here. Main event number 1 from February 5th, 1988 from Indianapolis, Indiana, headlined by Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant for the WWF Championship, the famous or infamous, however you look at it, with the twin referees. We got the Hebner twins. We have the Screwjob DiBiase trying to buy the title. So we're going to get all into that. And of course, we're going to cover Saturday night's main event 15 from March 12th, 1988 from Nashville Municipal Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee, headlined by Harley Race and Hulk Hogan. And then we're going to cover Saturday night's main event 16, April 30th, 1988 from Springfield Civic Center in Springfield, Massachusetts, headlined by Randy Savage. Just won the title about a couple weeks before this versus One Man Gang for the WWF Championship. He was the winner of that tournament. So we're going to cover all different spectrums of this. We're going to be covering the lead up to WrestleMania 4, why we got there to have a one-night tournament. We're obviously going to cover the go-home show prior, and then we're going to talk about really the fallout. So this is one of those episodes we're going to cover a lot of ground here.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I love the timeline wise of everything. Like it's jumping through, but loaded events. I really enjoyed the main event. I enjoyed both Saturday night's main events. It was a good time. So I'm pumped to get into it, man.
And that's what's really interesting about these episodes is that we jump so far in time that we see faces turn heel, heels turn face. We also see title changes and storylines progress. And this storyline that's been interwoven here, of course, it's always been about Hogan as the champion. Will he lose? Held the title since 1984. And here we are in 1988. He's just about to lose it here in nefarious ways. He might be going on to Hollywood and do other things. But it's almost a passing of the torch with you had to pull it out of Hulk Hogan's hands. It wasn't like he was handing it over willingly. And all those times he passed the torch, even WrestleMania 6, it wasn't like quite willingly. But with Randy Savage being crowned champion, kind of a very poetic moment here at WrestleMania 4. We're not going to cover the event at large, but this was a turning point for wrestling. I think people don't give... Randy Savage gets a lot of flowers for things he's accomplished in wrestling. One of the more charismatic guys, one of the best promos, one of the best workers in wrestling. But people don't really consider that he was one of the first of his kind, being an undersized wrestler, being taken seriously in the main event, and being a world champion. This was a really big deal and paved the path for guys like Bret Hart, guys like Shawn Michaels, guys like Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson to eventually win that WWE Championship.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I'm obviously a huge Macho Man mark, so I was super, super excited to get to witness this, rewatch it again. Super badass, but all the flowers to Macho Man. I think he's doing good as a champ here. I think it's awesome, man, and it paints a different picture. Removing the title from Hogan is just a big deal, man. And you give it to Mach. Who better than Macho Man Randy Savage himself?
And it also sets the stage for this WrestleMania 5, the Mega Powers Explode, where they knew what they were doing, man. And I think they are the benefit of having to do these stops and these shows that are so far apart, and they're booking out. And of course, we just saw the first Survivor Series. We're going to see the first SummerSlam, and they're starting to put some of the big four together. It's not just WrestleMania to WrestleMania, but they're really putting these stories together, and they knew that they wanted to get from point A to point B from year to year. And here we are watching sort of the fruits of their labor come to fruition. And we're on the build to WrestleMania 5, and we're going to get the payoff of it, of course. We're going to see a lot of that happen. We're talking about the main event number 1, where Andre gets the title. He's champion for like less than a day. But also, we see the Mega Powers imploding on the main event as well. So that's another big moment that people look at as historic and very memorable. So it's awesome to take this ride with you.
Yeah, no, I'm super, super pumped, man. And historic. I mean, look at where we started. I mean, we were pre-WrestleMania here, and then we're blowing up into almost WrestleMania 5. And we're only 8 episodes in. It's insane.
So each week we're going to go through all the tapings and newsletters and give you context to keep you updated on the happenings. We have 3 cards to review from 1988. We have both recently watched it. And of course, you guys know it's truly a shot of nostalgia. So follow along, watch along with us, and be prepared for the next episode. We're going to preview in our final segment when we close the tab, telling you guys what's next. And if you're looking for the schedule, you guys can follow along sequentially. We're usually going to cover the 2 next episodes of Saturday Night's Main Event. But if you ever have a question, just reach out to me on Instagram at ACEFIELD RETRO. I'll give you guys the schedule so you guys can check it out. But Belcast, with that being said, let's get to happy hour, and let's start hearing what Dave Meltzer had to say in March of 1988.
Happy hour.
See, I got a little of the music there. I was dancing. I was feeling it with Dusty, man. We're beating it up.
Here we are in March of 1988. Of course, Dave Meltzer has been our tour guide. He's like, when they do the Disney Safari, he's on there wearing the hat. He's telling you about, if you look to your right, you can see this. If you look to the right, there's an elephant. All that stuff.
Kamala.
Dave Meltzer, he's our guide. But we're starting to see in this newsletter, we're going to talk about it. There's definitely some heat. The more famous you get and the more notoriety you get for your commentary on wrestling, the more criticism you're going to get. And I think we still see a lot of that today, Belcaster, where there's a lot of criticism on Dave Meltzer. And a lot of the criticism couldn't be, you could support it with, if you don't agree with his opinions, that's fine. But a lot of the criticism comes from a lack of exposure to reading this. And like the biggest thing I have seen from wrestling fans, and that's not everybody, there's people probably that just don't like him at large, but most people that are critical of him usually find a quote that is pulled out of the piece that is usually misrepresented, or maybe not even something he said at all. So question for you, I think you've always had an appreciation for Meltzer, but do you look at this different now that we're in season 5, episode 8 here? You've been looking through the lens of his historic context. Like, do you feel like your opinion has changed, or do you feel like it's kind of the same at this point?
Listen, I mean, we can go into this not having to agree with everything he says, but I don't think there's a better historical reference than the newsletter. And whether he's right, I mean, he's spot on for a lot of stuff, but either being right or wrong, it doesn't necessarily matter because I mean, nobody else is covering this shit. So I mean, it's one of those, you read a history book, there's a million different people that publish history books, but there's only one newsletter, right? And there's only one guy doing the newsletter going this far back. And so, I mean, you kind of have to just enjoy it for what it is, agree or disagree,
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I think the biggest piece people should take away from this is the only firsthand account. I mean, there are other firsthand accounts, but usually it's retroactively. There we have the wrestling podcasts that are happening. Like, I remember 1988, and I'll tell you about it. Like Ted DiBiase on his podcast talking about it. It's different than reading what someone wrote it was published in 1988. This is his time and place. He has the perspective of only someone that doesn't know what happens in 89, 90, 2000, 2023. He only knows wrestling up to 1988. And I think that's what makes it important, because it's a time capsule that his knowledge is just there. And it's almost, whether you agree or disagree, I think you said it best. I think it's just giving knowledge from someone who was there, and you can establish your own opinion.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it goes the same thing like any historical event that's ever happened. Yeah, you remember it in your own mind, but I mean, how well does that hold up 30 years down the line? This is right as it's going on. It's being written about in real time. So that's, I mean, that holds up more than most shit will ever.
So we lead into this build to WrestleMania 4, and of course we know that it's going to be a one-night tournament, and that's usually the draw here. And the latest news on WrestleMania 4, according to Meltzer, is that the live card at the Trump Plaza did sell out this past week. He continued, one can make the point that last year's show sold more than 90,000 tickets and sold out roughly in advance of this show, in which the paid attendance will probably be around 13,500. So 13,500 in attendance compared to the year before. And this was interesting to me because this is very wrestling history repeats itself. And I think there's a lot of conversation about the AEW being cold right now, not having a lot of momentum. There's been a lot of stories on the screen that we are very happy with, but as far as attendance go, they're running markets. We saw Salt Lake City for Collision wasn't bearing the most. I mean, attendance was down. They were showing it on the hard cam, and it's whatever. But
Yeah.
you watch even here historically, WWF at this point, they had WrestleMania 3. It broke all these attendance records and all that stuff. And then next year, WrestleMania 4, they're doing around 13,500, which is admirable. It's respectable, but it's not 90,000. So this is like, sometimes you have these one-off events that just draw large. And I think in comparing AEW, the attendance issues, you could follow the scope of things. Wrestling goes in ebbs and flows, and you have to kind of ride the wave, as you like to say.
100%. Yeah, no, and that's the AEW forefront of it is it's weird to see arenas half empty. Maybe they got to scale down a little bit, much like WWF did here, because sometimes you do have to take a step back. Sometimes you got to assess the situation at hand and figure out how to boost that attendance. But this is also a great move for any big event, because if you scale down from 90,000 to a 14,000 person arena, that just gives people more clamor to want to buy it on pay-per-view, I believe. Yep. And you're not forcing such a big crowd. That's why I loved when they would come to Chicago for these things, because the Allstate Arena, the Rosemont Horizon, it's a small building, maybe 15,000 people. And I get why they don't run manias or big events in Chicago that much, is because of the limitations of the arena itself. But with that being said, I think it's a beneficial thing to get more pay-per-view buys, get more bang out of your buck, because you're making way more money off of the pay-per-view buys, I believe, than you would be these people buying their cheap $20 tickets and a popcorn.
So the thing I do love is the perspective of why WrestleMania 3 did so well. And of course, it was Hogan Andre. You can look at the draw in Detroit and how hot the product was in 1987. But there's other things to consider that a lot of people don't talk about. And I thought this was interesting from the newsletter. He said, first, the entire state of Michigan was blacked out on both cable and pay-per-view last year. Either you went to Pontiac or went to some place like Toledo, which was a long drive away, or you just missed the show. He said this year Titan had 8 closed circuit sites in the New York City area alone, 8 more in Jersey, not to mention a closed circuit show at the Spectrum in Philadelphia, plus pay-per-view everywhere. In addition, tickets were much higher priced this time out. Last year's average ticket was $16.50, because even though the top price was $100, the place was flooded with $9 tickets. This year, the cheap seats are $25, but there are a few of them. The best tickets are $150, but there are 55 rows priced at $100. So that's all like inflation stuff, all that. This has me thinking about, in terms of sports and regional aspects of baseball, football, where everyone talks about live attendance and trying to get people into the building.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they want you there. And a big draw to this is that while you have pay-per-view exposure and you're spreading just the product everywhere, you're able to consume it, it does hurt live attendance, because someone that might have considered going to Trump Plaza, Atlantic City, they don't have to, because they don't have to get in their car or take the train or do whatever, because they can sit or even drive local to somewhere else that has pay-per-view or a closed circuit. So that does dampen. And as you mentioned, they're making more money, and they're going to talk about it in a second, that it's still going to be in the $1 million range, which is a huge deal. It's just not the same. And I think moving exactly what your expectations are for these live events has to change with how people are consuming the product.
Absolutely. And that's the same thing goes. I had just question popped into my head. Do you think, because AEW is doing these locational showings of their shows like Dave and Buster's, or like these sports bars and stuff like that, do you think that hurts people wanting to travel for the product and go to these pay-per-views when you can go watch with a bunch of people at a bar and enjoy it in the same setting? I mean, same thing was probably with this too. Like you said, you don't have to get on the train. You don't have to travel. You don't got to book a hotel. You don't got to do any of this bullshit. You just get to enjoy it in a different spot. It's crazy.
Yeah, pay-per-view was still new. I think it was something that people were just getting used to. It just a year prior, like only pay-per-view was available in limited markets, and now it's available pretty much everywhere. So it limits, and you have to get people in the door. You have to find a reason. We talked about, you get your money back if Jerry Laurel doesn't get his head shaved. Like, you're going to see something special in the building, and you also know it's not going to be aired on TV, which gives the appeal of these house shows. And the same thing goes in comparing to the NFL. I mean, the NFL is the same thing. You always wonder, why would someone want to sit in an ice cold arena or a stadium in Buffalo and watch the product when you could sit on your recliner at home and watch all the games in front of your fireplace? What's the draw about getting someone in the arena? And what it is, it's atmosphere, it's the fans, it's the camaraderie, as you mentioned, finding a way to make the live experience better, if not comparable to watching at home. And I think that's what wrestling, for me, what I love about live wrestling is, first of all, going with people I like to spend time with, but also the energy, the palpable feeling in that arena. You have to be able to replicate it. And I think they're still trying to, especially in 1988, where pay-per-view is still new, in a lot of ways, that's a little bit more exciting for people because it's something that they're not used to.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. It's a good form of getting your entertainment out there, and it's a good form for getting your people to watch your product. It's good business, man.
So Titan's big angle after Mania will be Andre versus Jim Duggan. The angle was shot on 3-9 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, before a sellout of 9,000 fans, just miles away from Jim Crockett Promotions' home turf of Greensboro. He continues during an interview in the second hour. Jim Duggan tries to interrupt Andre and Ted DiBiase. Andre beats up Jim Duggan, headbutts him off the stage, and a bunch of folks have to hold back Duggan before charging. And the next week, Andre's in the ring for a match with Brian Costello, jobber. Andre gives Costello a headbutt when Duggan comes charging in. Andre gets the advantage and starts choking Duggan, who bleeds heavily from the mouth, and the choking goes on for minutes. So 2 things from this. They already taped the fallout of WrestleMania 4 prior. Like, they did that. They did that the year before for WrestleMania 3. That's very ballsy. Like, we're covering Impact every week, talking about bulk tapings, and they have every taping done up until Bound for Glory. So Bound for Glory tapings are going to happen, and they have all their stuff together at this point. It's very risky. Like, we talk about it all the time, where someone may get hurt, someone may lose a championship, someone may get a haircut. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. Like, you have to have a lot of trust in the consistency of your booking. If you're going to tape your fallout show for your biggest show of the year prior to it happening, I mean, I can't imagine the courage to do something like that, because a lot can change. I can't imagine them doing that today.
No, and I remember during those pandemic shows that AEW was doing, WWE, like, they would bulk tape when that shit was uncertain, and things change. I mean, thank God there was like a global catastrophe going on, because it wouldn't have mattered. But like, shooting something for your biggest show of the year, pre-dating the material by doing those bulk tapings, it's hard business to handle, man. And I'm shocked that it went so well back in the 80s. It's insane.
So a big surprise of the taping, Meltzer says, was the appearance of Owen Hart, who worked under his real name in a squash match. Meltzer says, I'm not sure what the purpose of the match was, or if Hart was in for a tryout, since Todd Champion was also there this week for one. And he said it would not make sense to bring him in as a jobber. He posts his rankings of the top wrestlers in the world at this point. I don't have them in front of me, but Owen Hart was number 4, with Ric Flair being number 1. Randy Savage being up there as well. Owen Hart, who a relative unknown at this point. Obviously, Bret Hart is already in WWF making a name for himself, but Owen Hart is making waves in Stampede Wrestling, and big piece here. And anytime you see Owen Hart pop up, and he's definitely going to be in the fold very, very soon. It was awesome to see. And like, sometimes when you see names pop up, like Smoky Mountain Wrestling, we talk about D'Lo Brown, like when they mention a one-off thing here, it's always fascinating. And to think where Owen Hart's career eventually went, where he was just brought in here with a name, and all of a sudden he's really making a name, separating himself from what his brother was doing.
Yeah, it's cool. Pumped to see Owen like kind of wiggling his feet into the door, man. It's just it's history. It absolutely is. It's huge. Getting his first squash match, doing his thing. What are we at, 88 right now? It's badass.
So there's a lot of Bruno Sammartino in the next 2 newsletters, and the family is in the news because the biggest story coming from Titanland is that Bruno quit to work and promoting a 900 hotline similar to what Lou Albano does. Meltzer continues, Sammartino complains with the current product and the scene and disagrees vehemently with how WWF treats the fans and the business. He is also bitter because his son David did not receive a push. And when news hit, Bruno received a call from Lyndon McMahon saying he cannot use his name since they trademarked it. Meltzer says, you can imagine how Bruno reacted, since there are many who believe if it wasn't for Bruno's drawing power in the 1960s, that Vince Sr. would never have survived as a wrestling promoter, and Titan Sports would have not existed today. So Meltzer says, just as Hogan's popularity is built upon in the future from now, Bruno's popularity is what the foundation of WWF is built on right now. So this is a big deal, the separation. And he's going to be in an interview. He does a radio interview that there's a transcript. I didn't write down the whole thing. I just think it's interesting about how he disagrees at wrestling. And it took a long time for him to be back in the fold. Triple H was the liaison for him to come into the Hall of Fame and be back in the family. And just the way he looks at the business, he doesn't like, some of the quotes in here are insane, where he calls it a circus straight up. And when he was doing commentary for WWF, he was told to not call it wrestling, and he was supposed to call it sports entertainment. It was happening here in 1988 where there was a divide. The old school mentality of wrestling is long gone, and Vince is trying to redefine what it is. And Bruno Sammartino was like, dude, not for me. I'm out of here. Yeah,
he wasn't having it at all. Huge, though. I mean, imagine getting that call from Linda, saying you can't use your name anymore. Like they went above and beyond to kind of change that whole mentality. Like, oh no, we own your shit. Like, you can't go out. I mean, seeing it in '88, this is insane. Like, it paved the way for the future of how the business goes. I mean, even everybody's complaining about Brian Pillman Jr. going into WWE right now with NXT, and he's changing his name up. And it's wild, man. Like, WWE's just been very on the forefront of, we got to get the rights to this shit so you can't use it anywhere else. And it was a brilliant move on their part, but man, names Bruno Sammartino, that's insane to try to take that away from.
Well, I mean, the thing is too, it's a foregone conclusion now. We think about it, it's always the case. Like, we know Dolph Ziggler can't use that name. He's gonna be Ryan Nemeth somewhere else. And we know that Matt Cardona couldn't have been Zack Ryder. It's just like the culture that wrestling created. But at this time, for Bruno Sammartino, he probably looked at it and saying, like, how could you say you could use I can't use my name. It's my name. It's what I established. And that's really the mindset of really the promotion versus the talent. And this is what has the divide here, where the leverage is consistently, and WWE, WWF has fed that over time, where the promotions gained a lot more leverage, where the machine is bigger than one individual. Even Bruno Sammartino, where the business was built on his back in the Northeast, and he's going to pull away, and there's going to be a huge divide between both mindsets. And also just relationship is irreparably damaged to a point where it takes decades for it to get back into place. And I would say it got to a point where there was like a mutual respect and brought back into the fold, but it never got back to that level where he was the guy. He never really got his flowers like he should have in the future. And like the machine right now does not give him the credit he deserves for who he was and what he was doing, selling out of MSG 60, 70, 100 times a year.
And what a slight to somebody who built up, I mean, not your company, but your father's company, that you took over, and, just kind of slap in the face towards it. It's not good business.
So David Sammartino, we referenced before, he was in the WWF fold for a bit, wasn't receiving a push. He wasn't looked upon the same as I guess, Vince Sr. or even Bruno himself would have liked. But David Sammartino was wrestling in Watertown High School and went after a fan who was heckling him and threw him out of his chair. He was arrested and let out $100 bail and giving a April 4th court date. It was later announced in a wire service story that all of his bookings have been canceled. So he also was kind of, at this point, news travels fast, and I understand it's a different time. There's no social media, and thankfully for a lot of these guys, they don't have to have this news travel a lot of places, but promoters do talk, and the fact that he attacked a fan was a big deal. So not a good day in the Sammartino household. I think this was something they looked at as like, man, changing of the guard. He's now being blacklisted from wrestling for the time being right now.
Yeah, and not for any big reason. I mean, he was just over it, right? Like, and he paid his fucking dues. He built that damn arena so many times, and it's just for him to kind of dip away. It's crazy that Vince and WWF would treat him that bad. But the David Sammartino thing, that's what you mess up once, especially back then, and somebody makes the wrong phone call, you're done, man.
Feels like par for the course in the 1980s, though. Like, for a fan to get handled, you always hear those stories in WCW and NWA where, you hear all these stories where fans come out of line and like it just handles itself. But I guess in a larger scale, in Watertown High School, it's not the same as having the backing of a big promotion. So he was kind of out there on an island himself and paid the price. And $100 bail and losing a couple bookings isn't the biggest deal. And he moves on for sure, but it is a bad stain on the name, especially where what could have been. I think everyone looks at the name Sammartino. I think they imagine he would be the heir apparent to what Bruno was doing. It just wasn't the case.
No, and it's a shame. It's a damn shame, because who knows what could have been,
So we have Saturday Night's Main Event taped on 3/12 and aired on 3/12, taped on 3/7. 5 matches were aired, part of a 14-match spectacular, which drew a sellout of 10,000 in Nashville although once again, this crowd was heavily padded. Meltzer continues, as of March 4th, just 2,000 tickets had been sold and a lot of giveaways were arranged. It was announced in Nashville that anyone who could name 2 WWF wrestlers would receive 2 free tickets to the taping. All right, so just bringing this up because context is very vital here, where everyone talks about giveaways and how many people are brought in for All In by the good graces of Tony and who all that stuff. This has been going on forever in wrestling, where people have been giving giveaways to fill arenas. I do also like that they are trying to find a way to bring people in the arena, although they can watch Saturday Night's Main Event at home. This is what we were talking about before, sitting in front of your TV, in front of a fireplace, under a blanket with some snacks. They're trying to find a way. They actually gave you more than double the amount of matches live in Nashville to get people in the building. And it still wasn't enough. People in that market didn't want to come out. It took giveaways and free tickets to get them there. But the fact that they got 10,000 after only had a few days prior having 2,000, it's pretty remarkable. Yeah,
no, it's insane. But I listen, that's promotions. You got to be good at promoting your product, even if it costs you, a shitload of ticket sales just by giving away free seats. You're filling seats. You're getting new eyes on the product. That's how you adapt that casual fan base, is by going, hey, if you can name 2 wrestlers, and it's some guy in the street goes, yeah, that Hulk Hogan guy, and that Randy, the Macho Man, and then it's, you get to go to the show and take your family and make lifelong fans. I think that's a very understated way of promoting. Like, you really get, they don't do that enough, and I think. I forgot what show it was for AEW when they were here, but they were given, I think it was the first Collision, when Punk returned, that they were there was a place that was like, you buy 2 cheeseburgers, you get a free ticket, to Collision. And like, it works, man. I mean, it just needs to be out there more.
Yeah. I'm just bringing it up for the fact that people that are, winners write the history books, and WWE has won the Monday Night Wars. And you hear it being talked about in a negative way, that WCW used to give away tickets at Disney tapings, and they used to give away a lot of tickets in Atlanta and find a way to put fans in the building. This has been going on in all different markets for the remainder of time, and it will continue to happen. And for whatever reason, they were talking about this on the Observer Radio, that there's this need from the wrestling promoters for the TV product to have people in those seats. They have people that are sit-ins. They also have people that are paid to be there. And like, this is a real thing that WWE and AEW both do. And you also have the free ticket aspect. But if you watch a football game, a basketball game, and there's empty seats, no one thinks twice. They show the cameras. That doesn't matter. Yeah. It's interesting to me, because if you want to be considered a live attended sport, watching football on Sunday, you watch the Jaguars game or the Colts game, and you see empty seats that are there, but no one even looks, NFL must be doing really poorly with all these empty seats. It's just, I don't know. It's a weird standard that wrestling's held to. Don't you think?
I'm sure in the football community, like the Bears fans are like talking shit, like, look at all those empty seats in the Jaguars building, those losers, like they can't even fill it.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of talk with the Rays. They're in the news, obviously, with they got eliminated from the playoffs, but Tampa Bay is looking to potentially move. They can't get a new stadium, and they have, for a playoff game, drew less than the Royals, who lost 103 games for their season finale. And there was, for a playoff game, the fact that a little amount of people there is pretty crazy. But attendance is weird, though. Like, I feel like everyone gets so caught up on these numbers, and like everyone has to buy a ticket, and AEW can't give away tickets. Like, dude, I don't understand. Like, you just want the product to look good on TV. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, I mean, even WWE, I was at WrestleMania on WWE's dime this past year. Like, it's not like I paid for the ticket to the show. I could have bought night 2 and went to it, but I was like, why not? I could watch it in my hotel room, comfortable with a shitload of snacks that it's not going to cost me, $40 for a pastrami sandwich. So the WWE is still doing it, even for their big shows like WrestleMania. So don't be throwing that shade.
So before we get to this letter, there's 2 letters, and I know you guys love letters that we include from the newsletter to even bring further context from fans and what they think. There's one funny thing that I just want you to hear, because I know you love Jim Cornette, but Meltzer says, in NWA, nearly everyone who called this past weekend made some comments about several of the comments that Jim Cornette made on TBS last week on Saturday. And Meltzer said, how did he ever get away with saying, quote, beating meat on live TV? So even in 1988, Jim Cornette's making waves and saying things that most people wouldn't say. But man, that's Jim Cornette as Jim Cornette gets in 1988.
Absolutely.
Or in 2023.
Beat meat, damn it. Slap that bastard. You beat that meat.
So we have a letter from Fred Kreutzer of Baltimore, Maryland. And
Hi,
he wrote to
Fred.
Dave Meltzer, and Meltzer responded, "Hey, Fred, I'm going to look you up on Facebook." I'm sure at this point, Fred's probably do the math on this. Fred's he's an AARP member, right? He has to be, I would say, right?
He's rocking and rolling. He's living the dream.
So he was asking a question about the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission. He said, "I've often heard you mention the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission regarding blading. I go to both WWF and NWA cards in Baltimore, and for about 2 years, we've seen no blood in any match except for when Bobby Eaton got hit with the tennis racket at the Crockett Cup." He continues, "We've had cage matches, barbed wire matches, but no blood. Now, I'm not a blood fanatic, but as a fan, I feel ripped off. How can fans believe in wrestling if this continues? Is there a protecting commission here in Baltimore as well?" All right, so before I read Dave Meltzer's response, your thoughts. If you were answering Fred Kreutzer outside of like overseeing commissions, we know a little bit about them. You and I both work, in different indies, you in Chicago, me in New York, and we know what they look like overseeing the product. But as far as these matches, cage matches, barbed wire matches, ladder matches, last man standing matches that end feuds and programs, if there's no blood, do you feel like the payoff is a little bit minimal?
It depends on the setting, obviously. At a ladder match, not necessarily. I don't think you don't need to be gigged in a ladder match. But if you're talking a cage match and a barbaric form of means of a way to win the match, barbed wire match is absolutely like, how can you do barbed wire with no blood? Makes no sense. It's a silly concept. But yeah, like for the bigger matches, like a cage match, a barbed wire match, yeah, you should have blood. Would I feel ripped off if I went to an exploding barbed wire death match and I didn't see any color and the explosion was puny? Of course I would feel ripped off. But in the aspect, do you necessarily need it? No. But for those bigger matches, yeah, absolutely.
So Meltzer responded to him and he said, "The commission in Maryland is also very tight on blading." He says, "This brings up an important point, however. Baltimore has been Crockett's best drawing city over the past year, and there has been no exception once during that entire time. Now, it'd be stupid to even hint that the lack of blood is a major reason Baltimore is a hot NWA city. However, at the same time, the lack of blood obviously isn't keeping fans at home either. And this is the NWA audience we were talking about now, not the WWF audience." He said, I'm not hardcore against blood usage or blading, although I am against overuse of the blade, but clearly the draw is the lure of blood and it's bigger drawing card than the blood itself. So it's almost like the potential of blood is more appealing than the actual blood itself. And Baltimore is the biggest drawing city. He just said it himself, and they do really well there, and they can't blade. And maybe there's something to that. I don't know. I feel like wrestling goes in different eras where blood is very important to the product.
Yeah.
AEW has brought it definitely back to the forefront in a lot of ways. But I remember the Ruthless Aggression era was like, it was so bloody. Shawn Michaels was bloody every night. Vince McMahon, Batista, these guys were blading for matches on Raw.
Yeah. No,
But
and it was overused to a point to where they had to take it away to make it special again, and that's it's a hard balance, I guess. I mean, having Mox come out every week and just bust it open. I mean, yeah, it does take away from, say the big match, the cage match where Mox is busted open. But I think they did it, if you do it strategically enough, to like, the Orange Cassidy Mox match where Mox didn't bleed a drip and Orange Cassidy was the one that took the heat. Like that was good, but too much blood, oversaturation of blood can be a bad thing, but also not having it, sparingly enough, it does hinder the product a little bit, I believe.
I completely agree with you. I think blood is a very important piece to wrestling. I think it needs to continue in its legacy. I think some of the biggest moments in wrestling have been emphasized with blood. I can think of some of the moments that feel like, the pictures of Ric Flair just bladed, and the pictures of Terry Funk, and even Hogan too, like Hogan with blood on his face. Those are memories that you have, and it's emphasized by he's gone through a battle. But as you said, I think anything that is oversaturated and they give too much of you become numb to it. Just as I think, Christian was talking about this in a podcast. He was on Swerve's podcast, which was such a great interview, talking about being a heel. They had an hour and change conversation just about everything. And he was talking about the crazy moves that happen on a weekly basis on TV. And he wasn't naming anybody by name, but like we can sit here and have a conversation about it. A guy like Vikingo who goes out there and hits, a 630 every single week. Eventually that washes over you because it becomes part of his routine, and you're not as amazed by it, even though it's continually more amazing.
Yeah.
You can't help but just expect it and be like, okay, what's next? Meanwhile, a guy like MJF, a guy like Christian, who works smarter in a lot of ways by doing minimal stuff, when he does break out something insane, it means so much more because of the progression to it. And that's very rare that it happens. So I'm not one of these old heads that think wrestling can't be Canadian destroyers and all high spots, but there's got to be a balance. It has to make sense in the story.
100%. And it's hard to, I mean, it's going to be hard for a Christian to counter react that, he's going to be like, oh, well, what am I going to go out there and do? I'm going to go out there and do nothing, because that's the best way. Like, that's why I think a character like Orange Cassidy gets over so well. It's because he goes out there and does nothing until it's time to step up. Like, he's the perfect example of what that balance is, because he doesn't get crazy unless he has to get crazy. And, when he's not being crazy, he's the complete opposite of what crazy would be. He's just like, he's dead, and it works out so well. But yeah, like seeing his 6:30 every week not only makes the move look weaker after time, but also if Vikingo goes out there and doesn't do it the next week, you're gonna be a paid fan who's gonna be like, what the fuck, man? I wanted to see Vikingo do the 6:30. Why didn't you do it? You know what I mean? So like, it kind of sucks the fun out of it again. So like, every time Jeff Hardy's out there and he doesn't hit a swanton bomb, you feel like you didn't really get the full Jeff Hardy match, right? That's how it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it too, sometimes teasing big spots in a lot of ways similar, like we just mentioned before in that letter. The appeal that blood might happen is more exciting than when it actually happens. Yeah. And I think you can compare that with a lot of things in life where, a lot of things are like that, where the buildup, the anticipation to Christmas is a lot better than Christmas itself, like that whole season building up to it. And I think the same could be said about wrestling. Like it's got to be built perfectly and the payoff has to be there. But let's get to the May 9th, 1988 newsletter. And this is talking in the fallout of WrestleMania 4, of course. And we have a lot of conversation here. And this is not the exact newsletter after, because there was 2 prior, but there was a lot of feedback on WrestleMania 4 and really Clash of Champions because it happened in the same weekend. And we're first going to talk about Saturday Night Main Event that aired on, that was taped on 4/22, aired on 4/30. And Meltzer said it was obvious from the show that Savage is the star of the WWF right now. He says, I don't believe there was even one mention of Hogan the entire 90 minutes. He says, it's also amazing, although hardly surprising, the difference in the quality of the main events with Savage in there instead of Hogan. So we referenced this before, being a worker champion. I think he made the joke last week where they were building up to DiBiase being champion. He'd be the first ever WWF champion that was a admirable worker. And Randy Savage right now is redefining what it takes to be a main eventer. And I think you can trace, the tree into all these different workers that we know and love. Shawn Michaels doesn't get an opportunity for Randy Savage isn't successful at what he's doing at this point in 88. Yeah,
no, you are 100% correct on that, man.
So we also have cutbacks too. Jim Crockett Promotions is not doing well in attendance. And we've been talking, there's a large article about Jim Crockett Promotions making a lot of cutbacks about presentation, but staff. But Meltzer says the cutbacks aren't just for Jim Crockett Promotions. He said Titan isn't starting its new season no longer as the managers travel except for the TV tapings. So you won't be seen in Bobby Heenan, Mr. Fuji, Slick, Jimmy Hart, etc. at your house shows unless they're wrestling or they are TV tapings. And he says that is simply to cut cost. He continues, I've heard conflicting stories about Elizabeth since she's an important part of the Savage Act. Last I've heard, she's only to appear in selective markets, not on a regular basis anymore. They also cut back on dates. Last year, this time, they were running 20 to 25 shows per week. Now they cut back to 10 shows most weeks, 12 shows when they were taping TV. And the wrestlers will be working 4 days on and 3 days off most week. And that's for the big name wrestlers. The marginal guys will be just working from time to time. And the C-teamers will just work twice a week or less. So a lot of cost cutting. They're being paid for dates. What are your thoughts on why they're cost cutting? Is this just like they want to make sure they're seeing arenas that are becoming, as we said before, the word saturated? Are they trying to make the product a little more fine-tuned, or is there something different?
No, I think it's a little bit of A, a little bit of B, a little bit of spectacle. Like if you're going to a house show and you want to see, if you're paying a ticket to go see Bobby the Brain Heenan, you're going to want to go to those televised shows more so. So I think you're going to draw a value to the performers. You know what I mean? And sure, it's not all managers and stuff like that, but I think it's a good balance. But I also think there's a longevity of the talent here too. I mean, working 25 shows, a wrestling show a week, that's insane. So having it dip down to, I would
people don't understand, like, that's insane. If you've ever worked, or just think about what it takes to run a wrestling show, what goes into it, not to mention just the physicality of wrestling a match, and do that 25 times per week, that is absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, just think about the crew you would need to set up. Just the backstage people alone is a heavy hit on the wallet for that. So I think there's a good. Maybe they didn't realize it at the time, but it's probably good for longevity of the talent. Maybe that's why, a good portion of this year's talent did live a little bit longer than most people that started like they got big in the 90s or started before this. So yeah, happy to see it. Absolutely.
There's something to be said. I mean, there's no way that's a sustainable pace for anybody, even guys that are working even on the lower end multiple times a week. Like, that's just not a pace that is sustainable, especially in a time where there wasn't the same awareness for protocol for concussions or just mindful eating and drinking.
Yeah.
Like, this was a time where it was like Miller Lite and drink some, have some pills and
some beef
move
jerky
to the next town. Like,
and
you see why this is a systemic issue with wrestlers, where your body just can't keep up with it. You are only one human being, and to work that amount of shows in a month is just absolutely insane.
Yeah, no, that's wild.
So we have Paul Gallant and Brian Doble of Portland, Maine, writing a letter, and they're very passionate here, Belcaster. They're very angry at Dave Meltzer for comparing WrestleMania 4 to Clash of Champions. And so we're going to read a little bit of the letter. It's very big and very long, and it's lengthy. It's well written. I got to give them that. On a typewriter, there wasn't a spell check. They went out there. They put the commas in the right spot, the punctuation in the right spot. But
no whiteout was used.
Exactly. They had a lot to say with Meltzer, and Meltzer did, respond to it. So I want to just bring it out here. And this is comparing the two products, WCW versus, Jim Crockett Promotions at this point, and also WWF WrestleMania. And they're two biggest shows of the year. So this is Paul Gallant and Brian Doble. Not sure whose voice this is, but they both wrote it together. They sat together on the same seat. They wrote it together. But
it's very romantic.
Very romantic. So they said, as much as we respect you in your newsletter, we are disturbed by your continuing and we believe unwarranted criticism of Titan and Vince in particular. This anti-Titan attitude, while understandable, in some cases laudable, has been a concern to us for some time, and we had intended to write soon, but your recent post-Mania newsletter moved up our timetable. It was just too far off the mark for us to ignore. He continues, we remain dumbfounded by your criticism of Jesse's commentary, for which we considered one of the highlights of WrestleMania 4. WWE can be pretty stoic. We can be pretty stoic Mainers. They consume, Portland, Maine kind of thing. Not given too laughing much out loud, but close to 4,000 fans who packed the exposition building in Portland literally roared at some of Ventura's, to a lesser degree, Euchre's remarks. And he said this about Crockett. Crockett kicked Vince's ass. Perhaps Vince will take in less money than he expected, but to say he got his ass kicked is inaccurate. It indicates an anti-McMahon bias on your part that is close to out of control and worse, does disservice to your readers. Like it or not, your newsletter has become the paper record of the business. As such, it wields great power, but it also has great responsibility. And we believe you failed in your post-Mania newsletter to fulfill that responsibility. He continues, as your publication grows in size, scope, influence, and readership, you should consider separating commentary from news columns as other publications do. Perhaps you object saying things you have not intended the Observer to become and what has become and do not intend to change it. We understand that, but we contend that you have a responsibility to this business and your readers to treat Vince more fairly. So he's going to talk about this as well. But this is the type of stuff that is fueled today, where they feel like he has an agenda, a bias towards the product that he likes. Obviously, nowadays, you could just replace Crockett with AEW, where people feel like he's shilling for AEW, and that's always been there. And he's going to have his retort and talk about what he feels and all that. But what are your thoughts on these fans feeling so passionately writing towards Dave? Because this is the first really negative energy we get towards the newsletter. It's always been kind of copacetic, people being thankful, like asking questions, logistics.
Yeah.
This is like the birth of this like sort of tribalism feeling on the other side, where this WWF fandom has grown to a point where if they're even criticized by somebody, someone's coming out of the bushes and yelling. That's what it seems like. No,
listen, this is a lot more long-winded than, just tweeting back Meltzer and saying like, shut up, man, you don't know what you're talking about. These guys took probably a good portion of an evening to curate this letter and put it together. But respectively, they're in every position to clap back at them. And I think without these kind of people, I mean, you could just go rogue and write whatever the fuck you want without any repercussions. I mean, you have a fan base out there that pays to get into your, newsletter mailing list, and these guys have every right to voice their opinion back at them. And I'm glad Meltzer wrote them back. I'm glad that he took the time to post this in his newsletter and talk about it, because like I said, without without a voice coming back at you, everything you do is the right way, like, so if nobody's telling you, hey, we don't like this, or hey, this isn't fair, or this is wrong, you're just going to be spatting out bullshit. And maybe these people are a good reason why Meltzer continues to get sources, make sure he's double checking, fact checking shit before he posts it out there. And I applaud him, man.
No, I do. I appreciate that as well, that he didn't have to publish this. No one would know this exists if he would have just, took this, crumpled up and threw it in his toilet. Like, he put it in the newsletter, and he responded to it. And this is longer. And if you guys want to know it, read it, I can send it to you or whatever. But I'm going to read this one last part because I think it airs a lot of truth today and some of the criticism that Meltzer gets even in 2023. And they say, we can only conclude at the risk of insulting you that you and other publishers have constituents to satisfy. That are certain things you must say and certain things you can't say to protect your flow of information. You can't be as objective as you'd like to be, again, like any other publisher. But at some point, your readership, your most important consistency has to take precedence. You lost some credibility with us anyway by writing your Postmania 4 issue. If you risk losing the flow of info from a promotion, then you should find a way to attribute that info to someone else. I realize this is easier said than done, but it's a common technique in journalism. We can't stress enough how valuable and necessary a newsletter is to this business and how avidly it is to read, but we sincerely believe some changes must be made. So this is something that people always say, that, he's being funded by elsewhere. And if you read the newsletters and listen to him talk, and I feel like people don't do that enough, they take snippets of things he says, or maybe even like misquotes of things he says, and then they make a conclusion of it. He just likes what he likes. And I think that's the problem here, that he's not this overseeing objective person. He can't be. He is subjective. He is someone that likes Japanese style wrestling. I mean, by God, he was loving All Japan Women last week that we were talking about. He likes what he likes. And I think people get so caught up of that he doesn't like the same thing you like. And that's okay. And I think his voice was the first. I mean, he was the first platform. Of course, there's a lot more with social media, as you referenced before, Twitter and Facebook, Instagram. A lot of different voices are out there now. So he was like kind of paving the path for it. But I just thought this was interesting because this is some of the same criticism he sees today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But anybody that speaks in a public forum, there's people that probably are listening to us that are like, oh, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And like, that's totally fine. Like, we're not going to disagree with certain people. Like, that's the thing. Like, maybe because he was just such he's the only one doing this at the time, right? So these people are probably a little bit more pissed off at him than they possibly should be. And this is wrestling tribalism today, but it was still going on back then. They just didn't have a way to get their shit out there. Now we all have a way to get our shit out there. And I think this is just Meltzer trying to, or people just trying to keep them in check, but also put their point of view out there, right? Like, it's weird, absolutely weird.
So Meltzer does respond, and he's pretty even. You can tell he's angry, though. He said, "You were right about one thing. I was insulted by this letter. I wasn't insulted because you did not agree with my opinions regarding the March 2nd shows, because anyone who agrees with all of my opinions is not letting me do their thinking. No two people are fans of this business for the exact same reason. There has never been a major wrestling show that everyone disliked or liked. Ironically, in the 5-year history of this newsletter, Clash of Champions came closest to being universally enjoyed. When I said Jim Crockett Promotion kicked Vince's ass, I made it quite clear that it was in terms of presenting a better show and not making money. Every newsletter I've seen, more than 90% of the readers who responded to the poll, almost every call on the 3 talk shows I do during the week and after the show, and more than 100 letters I had responding to my comments in the 4-4 issue, only 11 disagree with that assessment. But even though percentages were on the other side, this newsletter's popularity is in part because the readers know that whatever opinion I give is my honest one. Read back to the issue after Thanksgiving, you'll see how afraid I am to criticize Jim Crockett Promotions, whether it be wrestlers, the booker, the front office, or announcers. Read my comments on Survivor Series. Where is the anti-McMahon bias you're talking about? Read the issue after Mania 3. I said it was the greatest wrestling production of all time. I was basically complimentary on the NBC special, which I received a ton of flack over, which is fine. There's not one promoter in this business, not Fritz Von Erich, Ken Mantell, Jim Crockett, Dusty, Vince, Patterson, Vern Gagne, and even Baba and Inoki don't believe I am biased against the promotion in comparison to the others. I admit to being biased towards the Crockett style working matches compared to the WWF, although neither is my favorite, nor is either of them my least favorite. I am also biased in favor of the way Titan handles its publicity, its organization, the way it rotates its talent, and overall professional look and atmosphere of the TV product. So he kind of goes off on him. And I feel like this is like kind of what he needs to say today. Like he won't come out and say it because I feel like he's just whatever. He's too laid back.
He's over it. Yeah.
California Dave. But you could write this today and send it out, and people should shut the fuck up. You know, I mean, this is what it is. He likes what he likes. He admitted to being biased towards the Croc style work, and he's allowed to. That's what he likes. You're choosing to pay for the newsletter. He can't be an all-seeing objective force. It's just not possible. I mean, he can be a journalist, but there's always going to be, especially in wrestling, what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're not being honest about it, at least into your own merit, then why the hell are you even doing what you're doing? Like, why even write a newsletter if you're just like, man, this is my favorite, this is the way it's gonna be. Like, it's just like, and then everybody could say, shut the fuck up, you don't know what you're talking about. But at least he's honest and open about it. And it's like, I don't like wrestling for the same reason you don't like wrestling. He's 100% on the same, sign on the dot. Like, he knows what the fuck he's talking about. And I completely agree with this rebuttal, man.
And I like what he said too. You're not letting him do the thinking for you. Like if someone agrees with everything he said, he wouldn't have respect for them. So like, you have to make your own assessments based on the information presented.
100%.
The final thing in the newsletter here, we had Bruno doing a phone interview on KDKA in Pittsburgh, which turned into a hotly discussed topic in wrestling. It's a huge, long interview. I'm sure the audio exists somewhere. I have the full transcript. It was very interesting to read. The one thing that they did ask him, the interview, and this was not done by a wrestling mind. This was done with a radio personality that's not really familiar with wrestling, but obviously with his popularity in Pittsburgh, this is something that Bruno was asked. He said, what happened to wrestling? This was asked him in a general sense. And Bruno said the new young promoters have come on and they think they know it all, and they've turned it into a circus show because they think that's great. They think with rock and roll and Mr. T, they will attract rock people and show business people. And for a while, it worked. At first, they were filling arenas. People who don't go to the arenas think wrestling's really big. But you ask someone who does go, and they'll tell you the arenas are not going that great. MSG last drew 9,500 people. On my worst day, I did almost double that. I had 211 main event bouts at MSG and had 187 sellouts. Today, if they sell at MSG twice in a year, it's a big deal. So, yeah, people put some respect on Bruno's name, dude. Like, I don't think people put enough respect on what he did in the 60s and what he did to establish the WWF to where it is today. He does not get the flowers he deserves. And I don't know if he ever will, because the machine took off after his popularity, but they would not be where they were if they weren't standing on his shoulders.
No, 100%. I mean, that's why I said it. How disrespectful could you be to like have Linda call this guy after he's telling you the sellout numbers, 187 sellouts out of 211 main events. That's unprecedented. Nobody could do that today. So it's insane to go after him and be like, hey man, like, thanks for what you did, but we kind of need your last name. Like, you can't say that shit. It's ridiculous, man.
But he also, too, like, the thing with Bruno is he never adapted with the business. We were talking about Terry Funk and his unfortunate passing and him leaving this earth and, talking about his legacy. The one big thing that pulled away from all conversations from those that knew Terry Funk, he was adaptable. We watched the different eras of Terry Funk. He wasn't stuck in his ways. The dude was doing death matches. He was following the trends of wrestling. And I think that helps you stay relevant. I mean, watch a guy like Chris Jericho that lives in a whole bunch of different eras, working in the 90s and the 2000s, 2010s, and now 2020s. He still continues to be relevant because he has a progressive mindset. I think the one criticism I'd have for Bruno is he was unwilling to watch the business trains. He was so stuck in the wrestling had to be considered a shoot. No one had to know it was fake. He couldn't see the forest through the trees. And a guy like Terry Funk, Bruno could have learned a lot from him if they would have sat in the room and talked about what the business looked like. Because if the business was exactly where it would have been stuck where it was in the 60s and 70s. And it's blossomed well past that, for better or for worse. But wrestling was not going to stay where it was. And I think Bruno had to accept that. And he couldn't. And I think that's also where the fallout happened.
Yeah. And it also he was so hot-headed about it for so long that it hindered him from ever experiencing it. Like there was by the time he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, nobody gave a shit who Bruno Sammartino was. And I hate to say it like that.
No, it's sad, but true.
It's super sad. And like, by the time he gets up there, like me watching that, I'm like, oh, fuck, like who cares what he's got to say? Like, I just give him his award, get him off. Like, he's not Kane, it's a bad comparison, but shit, it's wild to see, man. And it's a shame On Bruno's side,
but that speaks to the
WWE
machine, though. You know what I mean? Like the WWE machine
Yeah.
hasn't been behind him for decades, like they've been behind
100%.
Hogan. You know,
Yeah.
and with them, if he was like, if they were throwing those numbers at you every single night, showing the highlights of him win the title and holding it for years and talking about it and doing what they did, he would be the biggest star ever. And like now he's just the clip they show and then now forever. And then he had the Hall of Fame thing. That's all people talk about. And that's because they control the narrative. They want whoever's going to be in the forefront to be in the forefront. And that's why people believe who's important, who's not important. If WWE says they're important, then they're important. That's why, you know, they write their own narratives. And I think that's, they brainwash a lot of wrestling fans to think about how wrestling was invented, started, how it progressed over time. You know, people look at Terry Taylor as the Red Rooster. That's all you need to know. You know what I mean? Like that's what it is.
Yeah. Listen, man, you nailed it on the head there. And, yeah, and I'm not throwing any shade towards Red Rooster. I love Terry Taylor.
All right, well, let's do our Rooster strut and to get our fix and talk about the WWF main event.
Get your fix.
All right, Hulk Hogan leading us into our first edition of WWF The Main Event, taking place February 5th, 1988 from Indianapolis, Indiana, the home of Hawk. We have Indiana Hosewater, Market Square Arena. Current chancellor for the shoe. So they're doing this for the shoe here. Current WWF champion, Hulk Hogan. He won it back on January 23rd, 1984. We say goodbye to that reign tonight. Intercontinental champion is Honky Tonk Man. He won it back on June 2nd, 1987. Our tag champions are Strike Force. They won it back on October 27th, 1987. And our women's champion is still Sensational Sherry. She won it back on July 24th, 1987. And to this day, this is the highest rated television show in the history of North American professional wrestling. And just to show what that exactly means, this show drew over a third of the Super Bowl crowd that we saw from a week before. And everybody watched Super Bowl. We know that. So wrestling was in a different landscape here, doing huge numbers for this. And that's why when you put Hogan versus Andre on free TV, it's going to draw. So
hell yeah.
So we have Vince McMahon and Hollywood Jesse Ventura leading us in. They were showing a Hogan workout video. And really, you know, this was something that this is so 1988, Hogan pumped up and getting ready for the match. And I loved it, man. The intro had me hyped up. I was excited to watch this.
Yeah, the only thing that would have made it better if it had Push It to the Limit in the background, like push it to the limit.
Who knows? It might have been, but we didn't have it on Peacock. So
very true. But that was the most 80s shit you could throw into any wrestling shows. That pre-workout, you know, cracking the eggs, brother. Get ready to do the reps. We're getting wow.
So our opening contest was Randy Savage with Miss Elizabeth to take on the WWF Intercontinental Champion, the Honky Tonk Man, for the championship. Of course, Honky Tonk Man has Jimmy Hart and Peggy Sue in his corner. I said, of course, but like, if you quizzed anybody, who's Peggy Sue? But she's in his corner. This was pretty much the finale of the on-screen feud between Randy Savage and Honky Tonk Man, because Savage, right now, he's about to be launched into superstardom. I mean, he already was, but he was about to be tossed into the world title picture, the feud with DiBiase and Andre, and he's a guy that well-deserved, man. Like, this is something that's a huge launch point. They used to use the Intercontinental Championship as a launch point. Of course, he held it. He had a stranglehold, great program with Ricky Steamboat, continued to hold it and chase it. But now he's going to be taking that launch point out of a need because of the fact that Hogan was going on to Hollywood. So he was the predecessor. And I mean, I'll let you lead through this match. Tell us about it and you know what you thought about it. I mean, it went pretty long for a main event match.
It did. I was very shocked. I mean, the main event thing was crazy because it was so. It's the same time frame, right? But it felt like a shorter episode because there was more. I think they let the matches breathe a little bit more, and there was less segment bullshit in the middle of it. And this was a match that desperately needed the extra time, man. It was fun watch. I mean, Honky Tonk Man, I'm tired of seeing him thrust. He did it to me, you know, 10 years ago at a flea market. So I have this bad taste in my mouth watching Honky Tonk Man wrestle to begin with. But my goodness, if he looked at Elizabeth one more time and did the thrust with the hips, I wanted to fucking go jump into the screen and knock the shit out of him. But Macho Man did that for me, and that was what's made it the best. A good back and forth, though. It wasn't Wasn't my favorite Macho Man match, but possibly was my favorite Honky Tonk Man match. Good, like I said, good back and forth. Shame it ended on a count out. But yeah, we got to see some pageantry from Savage afterwards. He finally lifted Miss Elizabeth up on the shoulders. He's not so mean and gritty towards her. We're getting this beautiful, softer side of the Macho Man. You know what I mean? So it was a great match, though. A little bit under 10 minutes. I enjoyed it. Nothing really took it away from me. And I'm happy to see Macho Man moving on from the Honky Tonk Man.
So we do know, obviously, you can't have a title change hands on a count out or DQ. So this is a good way to keep Macho Man strong, keep the title on Honky Tonk Man, and have a finish. So you kind of check all those boxes. And the ending, as you mentioned before, we had a nice moment between them and Randy Savage getting a softer side. Randy Savage puts a sleeper hold on him, and then he lets go of the hold when he sees Peggy Sue's about to slap Elizabeth. So he gets upset, and he wants to save her, and then catches Honky Tonk coming off the apron with a shot to the stomach. Randy Savage runs him into the ring post, rolls back in the ring. Honky Tonk Man is laid out outside. That's where the count out happens. There's some stuff that happens after the match. Of course, Randy Savage gets the win. It was awarded it, hand raised by the ref. But Honky Tonk Man brings his guitar in the ring. He gets in and Randy's face, corners him, but Elizabeth gets in the way to save him. So this is a really big deal that she's stepping away. You can see how much the relationship has grown, the trust, and the fact that Elizabeth is doing this for him. It's something that the fans should look at. And like, Randy truly is a change man. He is a baby face here, but you can kind of circle this moment as if she's behind him feeling like I need to support my guy, everyone understands that he really is a guy that should be supported by them. So Randy stands up. He blocks the impact of the guitar shot. He kicks Honky Tonk out of the ring. He breaks the guitar. Macho's music hits, as you referenced. He holds the rope down for Elizabeth to come in. He lifts on the shoulders, and all the fans pop the circumstance. You get the flash photography. Really good moment that this is starting on that bridge to get to where we want to go. It's the Mega Powers collide at WrestleMania 5.
Yeah.
He's got to win the title at WrestleMania 4 for another amazing moment.
No, I thought this was really well done. And I mean, Macho Man, coming from when we started this, he was just angry at Elizabeth all the time, and like you felt it. And his feud with Animal was like a little goofy, like a little off. And this is more a beautiful storytelling mechanism to see them kind of have that softer side, to be like Elizabeth doing stuff for Macho Man that she normally she would get yelled at if she did that before, so like right. Macho Man really bringing her in. It's telling a tale that I didn't see when we start. Like, we knew where it was going, but I didn't see I didn't see the how they were building the sandwich, So this is really cool to watch. I loved I loved when he picks the ropes up, man, for her, and she gets in, and like, it's just a really nice, beautiful moment between the two. Very well done. I loved it, man.
So before we move on from this match, I know there's been some conversation about Ted DiBiase eventually being champion. He never really was. Do you feel like, especially since we saw the run as a heel, he was a heel, one of the top heels, be it in the mid card for the WWF Intercontinental Championship for 2 years. Like, he was doing that for 2 years. He had just turned face. 6 months into being face, he's going to be world champion. Do you feel like they should have let her put on burn, had DiBiase win the tournament, and maybe have Randy Savage win at SummerSlam and build up some heat, and people would feel a little bit stronger about Randy Savage? I know it's, hindsight, and, it all worked out in the end, but do you think maybe that would have been a little bit more fun leading up to SummerSlam 1988, 1989? I
like the picture you're painting. That's what I got to say about that, because it would be great, man. And but also still a great moment for Macho Man regardless. I think it's well deserved. Could have been done better, yeah. I mean, I would have liked.
Well, everyone gets so stuck on the moment he won the title at WrestleMania 4. I love it. Like, I used to love that, watching that tape as a kid. Like, obviously before I was born, the match happened, but going back and watching it, I used to love it. But the one we'll talk about, the tournament, it didn't hold a lot of weight. The matches were short and all that stuff, but I don't know. There's something about, obviously they weren't committing to having a heel win. That was a big step. Like, I think Yokozuna was the first heel to ever win at WrestleMania, was he walked away with the championship, and eventually Hogan did win. Like, Hogan came out and win the title for the feel good moment. I think the only heel to ever really win at Mania, the title feel good, the moment, was Triple H 2000. Like, that was the first time they're like, you know what? Fuck it. Who cares? Have the heel win. I don't care. I feel like it would have been a big moment, a big ass to not send the fans home happy. Like, you have to be really confident they're going to come back the next week to make sure, like, I don't know. It's a risky move to have your biggest show of the year not end on a happy note.
Well, yes and no, because you're going to want to tune in the next show. That's part of the the draw of having the heel go over sometimes is like, man, what the fuck? What are they doing here? What's going to happen on Raw tomorrow? How are we going to figure? You
but
know,
it's like WrestleMania, like was their season finale. That would be like watching the action hero die at the end of the movie. It's like, yeah, it's interesting, but I feel like people are waiting for the payoff. You know, I think DiBiase would have been the guy though, because I think there was a lot of interest in what he was doing, and I think whether fans like to boo him or cheer him, most people booed him. They felt very strongly about him. So I think the chase to have DiBiase with the title and the interesting dynamic, I don't think they really touched him. We're going to talk about the match next where he tries to purchase it. That story never really comes back. Like, I think there need to be a little bit more to it. Once he falls out of the picture, he was always floating around there, but he never quite grasped it. I think it's a missed opportunity for how great a worker and how great a character he was.
100%.
So we lead into the famous match, Andre the Giant with Ted DiBiase and Virgil taking on the WWF World Champion Hulk Hogan for the WWF Championship. And so this is a wild match, man. This is, in my opinion, it doesn't have the same flair that the Silverdome has, but this certainly has a lot of, like, it feels like a big match, especially that it's on TV. And for the history of this, DiBiase had bought Andre's contract for Bobby Heenan for $1 million a week prior to this match. And which is why we don't see Bobby Heenan here, which again could be because of cost cutting. Who knows? Like we saw in the newsletter. Hogan is absolutely just like on fire from this, like almost transitions. I know that's a pre-tape exercise thing, but he comes out all jacked up on pre-workout, caffeine, whatever. He's out here. He pulls DiBiase, Virgil off the apron. He big boots them out with to ringside. Hulk is just absolutely just on Andre from the beginning, and he can't put him down. Hogan nails DiBiase and Virgil again, and he charged the corner. He gave Andre a clothesline. Hogan's like going all out. He raked the eyes of Andre, and he heads up to the top rope. He gets slammed down. Andre is like, absolutely not. And then pretty much from there, it's a standard match where everything's going on, where you expect this to go the same way. As you're watching this, it feels rhythmic. It feels formulaic. But we get some chaos in the middle of this. I'll let you take over from here, but there's a lot of chaos in here, and this is sports entertainment at its absolute best.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, I still can't get over watching Hogan and Andre. Like, I'm meeting Hogan, how big Hogan was of a person. Seeing Andre make him look like, anybody against Luchasaurus, there's somebody of Hogan's stature. It's crazy, but there was some choking going on with Andre's singlet. Like, there was some crazy shit back and forth. But we got the referee fucking catastrophe going on here, the twin referee moment. And I know you were so stoked to cover this because it's Brian Hebner, it's Earl Hebner. We don't know what the fuck's going on, but it was the old bamboozle, the switcheroo, and it played out so well, man.
So we have who we think is Earl. You said Brian, but Brian is the son, but Dave is the other guy. So Dave is
too many
with Virgil. It's a Hebner guy. So and he doesn't get over the count. Hogan gets up, he turns around to complain. Andre gets to his feet. He grabs Hogan from behind. He hits a couple headbutts and then hits that famous double underhook suplex. Andre then covers Hogan's left shoulder up, and then we get him counting the 3 anyway. So like he hits the butterfly suplex. Looks like it's going to be a near fall. He counts through it despite him having it up. Andre covers Hogan, and then they give him the title. And Hogan's reign is, this is the 3rd longest single WWF World title reign ever. 1,474 days is over. Had it been a week later, he would have been tied with Bob Backlund, which was 1,481. And everyone loves the numbers now because Roman Reigns is continuing to climb up the ranks. I don't think he's ever going to approach these days, but who the hell knows with the booking pattern. But so Vince calls Hebner's mistake a stupid mistake, and it should have been overruled by Jack Tunney. But Ventura says this isn't football. We don't go to replays. And regardless of the fact Andre got his rematch based on a replay of what happened at WrestleMania 3, I like that they bring that back because they kept showing that highlight where after that original attempt to slam, Hogan fell down and it was a 3 count. And Andre is champion for really no more than, 45 seconds before he hands the belt over to DiBiase.
Yeah.
And even this moment is like, you knew this is happening, but I can't imagine watching this in real time because it was almost surreal because the heels are all waving at Hogan as they're leaving, and they've accomplished their goal, and they finally they beat Hulk Hogan. And the fact that like this happened, this ruse had been paid off, and once they leave, we see that there are 2 Dave Hebners in the ring, so they're literally like a mirror image, almost like the Doink the Clown thing, like where they're holding up their hands and like doing the miming. And this was amazing. So Earl ends up kicking Dave Hebner out to ringside, tipping off to Hogan who the real Hebner is. He grabs Earl and throws him out on top of DiBiase, Virgil, and Andre, who just happens to be still at ringside. This match, to me, man, like if you look at this in sort of a vacuum of watching this, this might be more historically significant in a lot of ways. I know everyone thinks about the records in attendance in Detroit. Everyone remembers that big moment. This was a ballsy booking decision on their end. Maybe their hands were tied because Hogan was going to Hollywood. He was leaving. But this was huge, man, because as we referenced before, taking the risk and taking the title off Hogan, who was your bell cow. This was the dude that was carrying media and carrying all this stuff. I understand it was short-lived. They eventually put the title back on a babyface, but to hold up the championship in a big way where people, at least at the very minute, thought that Andre or DiBiase was the champion. This was a risky move that kind of cements, once you have a secure fan base that people are going to come back on a weekly basis, you can make more creative and risky decisions that, open up avenues for a lot more fun. Because this is more fun than Hogan going over week after week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It makes for great TV. I couldn't imagine. It's mind-boggling to me that Andre's played as this guy. He's like, yeah, just sell the belt. I'm good. I don't need the belt. We don't need the belt. Like Ted DiBiase, I'll take your offer. It's insane and good. Captivating television. You watch this, you're wondering what the hell's next, right? Like, so I mean, you're gonna tune in to the next time Ted DiBiase's coming out to the ring. You figure out like, what the hell would you do, man? And so I love it, man. I think it's really well done. The match itself was probably one of my favorite Hogan matches. I think there was a lot of energy to it. He did a lot. Andre was, Andre being as old as Andre is and in the shape he's in, he looked like $1 million. It was a fun watch, man. Absolutely fun watch.
So the fallout of this has all of the chaos that Jack Tunney has to sift through. So he's WWF president at the time, and the title is now declared vacant the following weekend. And we get a 14-man WWF World Title Tournament set for WrestleMania 4. Really big moment here. Looks better on paper to do a one-night tournament. Like we covered Survivor Series 1998 when they did the one-night tournament, the Deadly Games, which, again, the match quality is very limited. They have matches that are upwards of like 4 minutes. The same thing can be said here, especially when you want to fit other matches on the card. It's hard to really emphasize a tournament. They were going to go, all right, every match on this card is going to be in the tournament. But there's a lot of people here, man. That's, 7 matches in the first round, then split them up. It's a lot of matches that you have to fit time in, and there's not enough time to go around. Maybe AEW could do something like that because the pay-per-views are longer, and maybe wrestling fans are a little bit more used to longer matches. And I don't know. One-night tournaments leave a lot to be desired, I have to say. But this was, has to have people excited. Like, how excited would you be going to WrestleMania knowing you're definitely going to get a new champion? Hogan's going to be in the tournament, but you at the very least think there's 13 other guys that can walk away with that title.
No, 100%. At least it gives a new flavor to the spectacle of what WrestleMania could be. And I know that one night tournaments hardly ever work. It's a lot of work to get that in, as you were saying, time wise, time management. It's a clusterfuck, right? So I think it's an interesting aspect. Good way to sell some tickets. Good way to get people talking about what's going to happen at the show. So job well done.
So we get a Hogan backstage promo here. He's very upset. Obviously, his title is now gone. And this is the first mention we get of the plastic surgery, the stuff that everyone talks about, that the Hebners were twins. Like, we know that they look alike, but they are referencing that DiBiase paid off money to get this dude plastic surgery to look like a Hebner. And I'm sure there's a million kids that grew up believing like that existed. Like they actually did that. But man, this is entertainment, man. I don't know. This was a lot of fun. If you separate, I think Meltzer was talking about it a couple weeks ago when they were talking about selling the title and like how big a deal it would be in NWA, and people would call it a stupid idea. It's not stupid here because it's entertainment. Like, this is like the evil villain won out. Can the hero come back and get it back?
Yeah,
I don't know. I like
or somebody step up and get it.
Exactly. I like when the baby faces have to chase. There's something to that where, yeah, they had their moment. It's awesome, but there's something to be said. Like Stone Cold was the best when he was chasing. I think there's no denying that. When he had the belt, it was like, all right, awesome. Like him at the top of the mountain. I like the grind up the top where he's like warding off the corporation. He's stunning Vince. He's stunning Ken Shamrock. I love that shit. So I don't know. This was like this was refreshing. It has to be, especially it had to be for fans. Almost 1,500 days of Hogan being champion. This was like, finally, this is awesome.
And sure, it's not as bad when you don't have, the market's not saturated like it is these days, where you got Raw, SmackDown, NXT. There's so many shows on. 1,500 days goes by a lot longer, nowadays than it was back then, and it probably was less annoying to see. Oh, Hogan's the guy. I'm sure the diehards were probably like, "Fuck this shit. I want to see somebody new." But this is a good market, or a good time for a casual fan to come in and watch something new change the product, and that's like, you got Macho Man as the champ. It's going to be great. Like, it's cool for everybody around. I think this was very entertaining, very well done. And it just leads to so many different possibilities that could be. So a good move on everybody's part.
So we have the WWF Tag Team Championship on the line here. Rick Martel and Tito Santana defeated Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart. This match was sort of infamous because of the time run over on NBC. It got cut short. So for years, no one saw the ending of this match. They just knew it happened. They showed the highlights of this on whatever WWF Superstars because they ran out of time. One of the biggest perks of the network coming out was that first week they released this match in 2014 for people to watch in full for the first time. So a lot of diehard fans were able to pick up where they left off in 1988. But following the ring entrances, we get Gene Okerlund conducting a backstage interview with Hogan regarding the title loss. And this is where I talk about the plastic surgery stuff. And then pretty much after that, the match gets cut off. But I mean, we are able to watch it now with hindsight, being able to check it out. But just know, like, the broadcast gets shut off and no one is able to see it. Not that it really mattered, because like everyone was going to be talking about it at the water cooler the next day or that Monday after that Friday of the Hogan Andre thing. But usually when the tag team championship is being featured here, it's in a big way. And the Strike Force and Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart were done dirty. This match was pretty good, despite it being cut off on NBC and being kind of lost in the annals of time. Yeah,
best $10 probably a lot of people spent when the network came out. They're like, hell yeah, let's finally the biggest payoff that you could possibly. That probably boosts so many subscribers. But no, it's cool. Listen, I'm not a fan of Bret and Jim Neidhart not being the champions, but listen, Rick Martel, Tito Santana, great team. They do the job, man, and it was good. It was a fun watch.
So that leads us into WWF Saturday Night's Main Event number 15 from March 12th, 1988, Nashville, Tennessee, the Municipal Auditorium. This was taped on 3/7/1988. This is our go-home show for WrestleMania 4, and our current champs are as followed. Our World Championship is vacant. Jack Tunney declared it vacant, so now it's going to stay vacant until the end of WrestleMania 4. All of our other champions are the same. Of course, we know Strike Force retained their titles. But tonight, Macho Man gets in front of the camera here. He says DiBiase is a bad check, and he's about to get bounced up out of here. So Beefcake drops some other hair puns. We get One Man Gang doing, just a tough guy impression. Harley Race thinking he's going to beat Hogan, and it's time for Saturday Night's Main Event. And we have some new music for Saturday Night's Main Event here as well. So this is a new presentation, a new season being renewed on NBC. So a little bit more glitz and glam on top of the product, but same old type of stuff. Vignettes in the beginning, which was a lot of fun, leading in with Vince and Jesse, the fedora hat wearing Ventura, leading us in. So some good shit here. This is going to set off the pace for a new era of WWF.
Yeah, no, listen, I love the fresh new look to it. But we thought those CGI graphics on the entrances in WWF right now, or WWE, are terrible. Some of these graphics that are in the background of these wrestlers is god awful.
So blurry.
It looks like Sega Genesis graphics. It's just so bad. But I loved. I kind of like the intro with the wrestlers coming in now talking like, "Oh yeah, you're a bad chick, and I'm gonna boot you out of here." Like it adds a nice vibe. It kind of gives you a taste of what you're going to be watching for the rest of the show. But some of those like one man gangs does not hold over well. Like he's just like, "Yeah, I'm the one man gang." Like it's like, okay, like we get it. Like move fuck along, let's go. But I love the new fresh look.
So we know, and they were talking about here, 35 million people watched the main event match between Hogan and Andre. They make sure they're clear about it. This is a big feather in their cap, and it's legit. It still holds a lot of records today, and it's still that bar for network TV wrestling. And imagine time and place where I don't know if there's anything they can do nowadays to get 35 million people to tune in. Like the only thing that draws that level is the Super Bowl, But to dream of that day, 35 million people watching an AEW Collision or a WWE SmackDown or something, and I don't know. It's interesting to think about wrestling being in that space and just knowing all the different untapped potential that there's a lot of fans out there. Like, we think wrestling is oversaturated, but there's so many people that are not even familiar with it. Like, I was at Walmart the other day picking up some of those WWE Superstars line. Anytime I'm there, I pick them up. And I was checking out, and the guy recognized I picked up the Papa Shango, one of the early WWE Superstars, one of the ones I didn't have. And he was talking about, oh, you watch wrestling? And he's like, he stopped watching the Ruthless Aggression era, and he was like talking about the Royal Rumble. And I'm like, dude, you just tune into wrestling. It's amazing to me. Like, he just put the bookmark in it, closed the book, and walked away, forgot it existed. And maybe that conversation led into maybe him checking out AEW or like just picking up where he left off. Like, that guy bought wrestling figures. He's 35 years old. Maybe there's something to it. So
no, 100%. No, it's crazy. But yeah, man, it's before we move on from that, you have to pick up the new blue cage ring from Target. It's an exclusive, but it's the blue ring, the old Legends ring, as they like to call it. But it comes with
is that on sale on the website exclusively?
No, it's in stores too. It's a thicker box, but it is perfect. It's not good for WWE, elites or the basics. It's perfect for the superstars and like the Hasbro line. That's beautiful. So just can't let you get away without knowing that little tidbit. It's a smaller ring, so it'll fit perfect on the shelf. But definitely beautiful for those superstars figgies.
check my local Target and see. Sometimes it's bare bones over there, so we'll see what they got.
Absolutely.
So we have Brutus Beefcake taking on Greg Valentine with Jimmy Hart. And this was, again, a longer match. Like, usually we're used to 4-minute matches. We got a match that goes 9 minutes. Lead us through this match. Brutus Beefcake has this haircut gimmick now. So this is the first we're seeing really of this barber gimmick that we're getting from him. These dudes are former tag team partners. Like, we forget that as well. They were teaming only a few episodes ago. So lead us through this match with Brutus Beefcake getting the win over here.
Yeah, no, this was actually a very, very good back and forth between the two. A lot of fun moments here. A lot of good stuff, good teases from Valentine hitting figure 4 and stuff like I really enjoyed it. I'm not a big fan of either man's work per se. It's not like I'm glued to the screen when I'm watching either one, but this was a fun, actual good watch. So I enjoyed the shit out of it. You got the sleeper hold in there, which was great. I haven't seen a good sleeper in a while, but Beefcake got the win. 9 minutes, like you said, we're so used to these shorter matches, especially on the Saturday Night's Main Event. Feels like a new era of match, like a new era of bookings coming through here. You're getting longer matches, richer storyline, but Beefcake snipped a little bit of Valentine's hair at the end of it, which looked really good actually. I would go, sometimes they do it and like it comes off shitty. Like Valentine's hair came off like feathers, man. It looked beautiful on TV. I thought it was really well done, but good shit, man.
So we saw a creative finish here at the end where I think they should break this out again. I think time has passed that they should probably do it. The infamous double pin. I think we saw Triple H and Shawn Michaels pull this off. There's been other double pins in the history of wrestling, but this was a time where they wound up having someone go over. So we had the back suplex. Beefcake gets his shoulder up at 2 to give him the win, and Valentine thought that he had won, that he got his shoulder up, but didn't. So this was creative, and I think it added a lot to this match. And the argument that Valentine had with the ref, and then obviously you mentioned before Beefcake grabbing the shears, start cutting some hair. I like this finish. I think it should be brought back. And sometimes in wrestling, you look at something like this could really work, whether it be on AEW or WWE, to have a finish to add some realism, because this was a double pin situation with the back suplex where you could allegedly have both guys or fans are like, oh, they're going to do the double pin, and then one guy gets it up at the last second, but the other guy's still pinned. How often do you get a kick out and a pinfall at the same time? Pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good point, man.
So we lead into Hulk Hogan taking on King Harley Race with Bobby Heenan. And this is, Harley Race, we talked about really the bastardization of taking the money and coming there and being a shell of himself. And I love Harley Race. I love his contributions to the business, but this version of him in WWE, WWF is definitely not what I want to remember of him. I don't think he gave his best work here, and I don't think he had the opportunity to. This was a cartoony era, and I don't think Harley Race fit there. And I give him a lot of credit for trying here, but he was fed to the machine. And this goes to show you, no matter how big, how legendary, how many times you win the NWA championship, not even the world's greatest wrestlers can defeat Hulkamania. And like, he's just kind of underneath Hogan. And this was a microcosm for that. There was some Harley Race highlights here. Like there was, the belly-to-belly suplex for a close 2 count. There was some moments here where like Harley Race was able to shine and be the wrestler he was. But this is certainly like there's a sacrifice of who you are to be here and for, life-changing money for your family.
Yeah.
I understand that. But this is not the Harley Race that we could have gotten. It reminds, he's the guy who can be top of the card. He was not presented as such here against Hogan. He felt lesser than, and that's sad to me because he could have been a guy who was a top heel. He really could have been. It's just wrong place, wrong time. Maybe if he came here a couple years earlier, maybe they would have put the rocket to him.
No, he got the Vader treatment, like he was brought in and it was just not taken care of. And like astonishing, the thing that stood out the most during this match to me was Harley hit that pile driver. Nobody gave a shit.
Right.
like we've talked about a few episodes ago, how big of a deal the pile driver was. And then I seen it. And the first thing I noticed, nobody in the crowd stood up. Nobody cared. Like it was just like, we need the Hulk shit or we don't want to watch the match. But this was an okay watch. It was nothing spectacular. And it's definitely not a great Harley Race match. And not even a good Hogan match. It was just like, But yeah.
So this is to get Hogan heated up for that tournament. And of course, we lead into 2 other guys who are going to play a huge part in the tournament. Ted DiBiase with Virgil and Andre the Giant taking on Randy Savage with Miss Elizabeth. Ooh. This was interesting to me because this is the finals. You're giving away your WrestleMania 4 main event, not that anybody knew it, on free TV. And how often can you say that they actually allowed their main event to go 11 minutes and 39 seconds? Can you imagine Roman versus Cody going a week prior, like on TV? And it's just, I understand it's a tournament and there's other matchups, and the draw isn't the fact that these two are building up this blood feud, even though they kind of are. There's a lot to be said about not touching, in the ring until the moment. And I guess the tournament takes that away, but you could have done another match here. Like, I don't know why they did DiBiase versus Randy. Like, they had to know it was going to be the finals, right? They had to know at this point it was going to be what they did. But you gave away this match, or imagine when there were some fans who were like, we just saw this on Saturday Night's Main Event, and we got a lot of this. Although it was a count-out finish, it still was, they gave us a lot here. I mean, almost 12 minutes of a match. That's a lifetime in 1988.
Yeah, no, it's insane and crazy. Like, why not just throw Virgil in there? Why not throw anybody else that you could possibly think of instead of Ted DiBiase? But whatever. I'm here for entertaining matches. This was an entertaining match. I enjoyed the shit out of it. My favorite part was the chops that Andre gave Macho Man after the match, because like I've never seen Macho Man get taken out by a chop like as hard on the floor, man. I was like, holy shit, because like thinking about how big Andre's hands are, and like he was given some those were solid ass chops, man. Those weren't like half-assed little like those were some big bam, and like Macho Man just fucking folded. It looked great, and it told a good story, I guess, going into Mania. So I'm pumped for him.
Absolutely agreed. I think these guys are the benchmark of who the best workers are outside of Bret Hart. These two guys, DiBiase and Randy Savage, are two of the best workers. And the fact that they're working at the top of the card is a sign of good things to come eventually in the title picture, where I love that these guys are competing at a top level. And of course, we get all the gaga at ringside with Virgil and Andre and Miss Elizabeth, and there's a lot of stuff outside of the in-ring action. But as far as a bell-to-bell in-ring type of product, there's a lot of good here, man. There's a lot of good stuff here with technically sound wrestling between DiBiase and Randy Savage. I don't think people give DiBiase the credit he deserves for what he's able to accomplish in the ring and elicit a reaction from the fans. He has such an ability to resonate with the fans in a negative way. It's not just, cheap heat. This guy is absolutely despised by them. And it's a credit to Randy Savage and what he's building as a babyface. But, a babyface is only good as the counterpart heel. And I think DiBiase was the perfect dance partner for Randy Savage here. And my only criticism is like you gave it away the night before. It's like you're about to have this big Thanksgiving dinner, and then the night before you're like, let's have turkey sandwiches. You know what I mean? Like it's not the same as the full Thanksgiving dinner, but you had a turkey sandwich. So maybe save the turkey for WrestleMania.
100%. Don't spoil your big meal, man.
So we have another tag match here: the Islanders, Haku and Tama, with Bobby Heenan taking on the Killer Bees, Jim Brunzell and B. Brian Blair, in a 2 out of 3 falls match. Dude, this is a 2 out of 3 falls match that ends in 3 minutes and 38 seconds. This is absolutely amazing to me. Like when they announced this 2 out of 3 falls, I'm like, oh, we're sitting here. We're going to have, how do you even fit that in 4 minutes? It's absolutely crazy to me.
And talk about a match that could have used a little bit more time. Like you could have shaved a few minutes off that Macho DiBiase match and gave it to this, maybe an extra 2 minutes or so. Especially when you got Haku in there. Like, I mean, reasonable to make sense out of it. Yeah, Haku could end a 2 out of 3 falls match in 3 minutes easily. But my favorite part about this was Bobby the Brain Heenan coming out in the B suit. Like the bee helmet and then holding the dog thing, like the promo beforehand too, which in the opening of the show was hysterical because Haku's like so they're going bzzz, you know, like and he's like they're just talking shit about the tag division and yeah, it's a good character for Haku, but this was nothing. There was no match really here. It was so short, but it was fun. Go Islanders. I'm here for that.
So a couple of background things. This is during the time where the Islanders stole Matilda from the Bulldogs. So this is why they're barking during the interviews to show that they are like they own Matilda now. And the other thing is too, they're trying to build the Islanders strong here to set up the big 6-man tag match at Mania with the Bulldogs and Coco Beware. So this is the Killer Bees at this point are kind of on their way out. They are definitely on the back end of their tenure here. So the Islanders are the new in vogue team. Haku and Tama being involved here. Like you said, 2 out of 3 falls. Whatever. I mean, the fact that it goes 3 minutes and 38 seconds is insane to me. I'm still stuck on 2 falls happen in that amount of time. It's pretty crazy.
A minute. Yeah. No, it's wild. Absolutely wild.
So we lead into our main event here. One Man Gang was getting set up for this mini push against Randy Savage, with Slick taking on Ken Patera. And as far as ending matches goes and ending cards, this is probably the worst choice. Like this match was absolutely horrendous. There's really not a lot of redeeming qualities of this match outside of like One Man Gang has a cool presentation. Like I'm of the opinion, and I know this is probably unpopular. Everyone loves One Man Gang. I like Akeem the African Dream. I think he has a better.
Yeah.
I don't know. He tapped into a different side. A lot of times I would be like, no, I think One Man Gang deserves to be featured in a lot of ways. But the Akeem the African Dream thing, he pulled a different side of it. You can see glimmers of it here. This match is awful. It's just absolutely horrendous. But you know, I mean, even in the context of 1988, it's still bad. It's bad.
Absolutely. And it was just, yeah. I don't know. I'm not dealing it. I like Slick. Slick's good. It's like the most entertaining part of the whole package here, but yeah, it did nothing for me.
So outside of the Honky Tonk Man and Beefcake thing getting set up during the Valentine match and then really setting the stage for this tournament, Savage and DiBiase, obviously the match is better at WrestleMania 4, so that's probably a good thing. They shouldn't have given away a better match, but again, stuck on my mentality is why would you give away, the milk without buying the cow type of shit. Like, why are you doing that? So
yeah, but
make people wait.
Different day and age. Maybe it was something to
see them lock
bring in the
up.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Who gives a shit?
I think one of those things where people look at it in the way they look at it, but if they had the benefit of knowing where they were going, it's not like this tournament was going to yield results that were unpredictable. They knew it was going to be Savage versus DiBiase. Why would you give the card the 2 weeks before? It's kind of crazy to me, but whatever. It's all good.
I don't know, man. Maybe it's like a tease. Maybe it was. I can't tell the mentality behind it. It just doesn't make sense. But maybe it drew a little bit more for the pay-per-view. Who knows?
So we have WWF Saturday Night's Main Event number 16, April 30th, 1988, from Springfield, Massachusetts, the Civic Center. This is the fall out of WrestleMania 4. So Randy Savage is now our newly crowned WWF champion. Our Intercontinental champion is still Honky Tonk Man. And at this point, we have a new tag team champion holders, and it's Demolition. They won it back at WrestleMania 4 as well. And Sensational Sherry is still our women's champion. Maybe she doesn't even know it anymore, but she's still our champion.
She's just hanging out at catering, collecting checks. She's having a good time.
So we get some of the vignettes in the beginning. Jim Duggan's in there, and he's talking about he's getting a little mini push here. We talked about the Andre feud. There's a lot of stuff. We referenced that in the newsletter. Jim Duggan was a hot free agent signing. We talked about it, I think, when Colton was on the episode where we know him through our indoctrination through WWE culture. Like, we know him through this. He's the American flag wielding, the 2x4 swinging, thumbs up guy. But he was a highly touted free agent that was a Bruiser Brody type of guy who was used to just like scare opponents, and he was a hardcore type of wrestler. And it's just amazing to me. But
Yeah.
he's getting a little mini push here. He was the first ever Royal Rumble winner. So there's that for him, but he was never quite accomplished on this roster. He was almost adjacent to a borderline enhancement talent. I feel like he was always floating between that area.
Yeah, no, but he was always entertaining, always good to watch. Like never seen Hacksaw and not had a smile on my face. You know what I mean? And that says something, because you could watch One Man Gang and be like, what the fuck am I watching here? But I mean, Hacksaw comes out, and you're like, all right, this is cool, and I'm here for it. Give me a 2x4, give me a flag, give me a big thumbs up, tough guy. Oh, I love it.
So we get Jim Duggan taking on Hercules with Bobby Heenan and Andre the Giant. And after Andre cost Duggan the match with DiBiase in the WWF World Title Tournament at WrestleMania 4, Duggan and Andre got into it at Superstars a week later. We talked about that before. And Duggan messed with the Heenan family. This is what he gets instead of Andre at first. So the build up to get Andre, he gets Hercules, which is the underneath here. Match is pretty, standard. Like, imagine a Hercules versus Jim Duggan match. Close your eyes and picture it. This is what it would be.
You got it.
you got it. This winds up being a DQ finish. Of course, we see him hit the 3-point stance on Hercules. Duggan covers. You think there's going to be a 3. Heenan runs in, breaks up the count, and we get Duggan getting the victory via DQ at 7 minutes and 30 seconds. This continues, though, because Duggan backs Heenan in the corner. Andre gets involved. He nails him from behind. And then Duggan gets triple teamed with the Heenan family at ringside. And the Ultimate Warrior makes the save. So shout out to Ultimate Warrior. Jim Hellwig's here. And we're going to get our introduction into the push to the main event for Ultimate Warrior. He's going to be taking the slot of really Randy Savage in that Intercontinental title picture. And then he's going to float up the card pretty damn quickly. We're 2 years removed from him at WrestleMania 6. So he's going to hot shot like a rocket to the moon, brother.
Yeah, he is, and more so than his actual energy does. He gets there quick, man. It's insane.
Absolutely.
So I'm pumped for it, though. It's cool, and it was a nice way to introduce him to the fold, right? Like, it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it.
So Brutus Beefcake defeated Danny Davis with Jimmy Hart. This match was quick, 3 minutes and 10 seconds. This is really just Jimmy Hart's idea of revenge for getting his haircut at WrestleMania. And he tags in Danny Davis to get his revenge. Of course, it doesn't get him anything. Brutus Beefcake puts the sleeper on Danny Davis for the win. And then Beefcake, for everyone's trouble, he gives Danny Davis a haircut and then beats him up some more. And this is the last time we would ever see Danny Davis wrestle in Saturday Night's Main Event. That was interesting to me. And he gets a haircut for his troubles. But Brutus Beefcake is, again, not a world champion type of guy. This push he's getting with Brutus Beefcake, with this barber character, is pretty substantial. He looks stronger than a lot of guys on the roster with favorable booking.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. I never understood it. I've never, like, Brutus the Barber Beefcake never captivated me. Never brought me in as a fan. I've never wanted to watch one of his matches. There was nothing appealing about it except for the shears. The shears was it, man. Like, that was it. And it was okay. I wish Danny Davis would have gotten a little bit more love in his time in, Saturday Night's Main Event, WWF, but it's all good. At least we got that goddamn rough action figure.
Hell yeah. And we have a WWF Championship match to cover here. Randy Savage with Miss Elizabeth took on One Man Gang with Slick. And this is built up. And I like the WrestleMania 4 fallout here. And there's a lot of webs of things that extend to that pay-per-view if you're watching this. So since One Man Gang lost to Savage only by DQ in the semifinals at WrestleMania, he now is deemed by Jack Tunney as the number one contender, so it kind of makes sense. And Slick is getting involved with Elizabeth at ringside, and we really have a lot of story at the outside of the ring. And One Man Gang is very limited in the match in the ring, but they utilize his size very well here, where Randy Savage has utilized the speed to overcome, and this is stale as old as time, David vs. Goliath, or overcoming the odds, underdog story. Despite Randy Savage working from underneath and being the champion, One Man Gang has the advantage for a lot of this match, where he's made to look strong. And I mean, I felt like this was a fun match, especially comparing it from One Man Gang with a less than agile dance partner with Ken Patera the week before. Randy Savage brings out the best of everybody. And I think it just shows you, when you sprinkle a little bit of that magic Randy Savage dust on somebody, all of a sudden you see the benefit of them. And I saw a little bit of what a lot of fans, when One Man Gang was brought over, that were excited. You could see the glimmers of it when you put him with the right person and put him in the right spot to succeed. This match was an evidence of that. And he can be that big bad in the moment when you need him. And it was quite clear here that this match brought the best out of One Man Gang. And it was an awesome match. Of course, Randy gets the win, but the Macho Elbow is the 1, 2, 3. Thought it was fun.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Like you said, how much did I care about One Man Gang in the last episode? Is going into this, it completely changed. He looked promising as a bad guy. He looked like a great heel. It made sense. And Macho Man, I mean, of course, Macho Man's going to pull the best out of his opponent, no matter what. But I thought they did a really good job, and it was really fun to watch. Nothing beats Macho Man winning the match, with the fucking elbow drop at the end of it either. So it's a win-win for me, man. This was this stood out as a great match on the card. Enjoyed it.
So we go into a tag team championship match, and this is another fun one, but it's kind of short. I wish we would have got more time for it. Demolition, Axe, and Smash are defending their tag titles against the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith, and Dynamite Kid. And again, this match is the crowd's very into it, and let's just say that. But the fact that they went with a finish that they had here with the DQ left a lot to be desired. The fans were not happy with it. The crowd was pumped for everything they were doing, reacting to everything Demolition was doing. This is probably the apex of when Demolition was over. They are very, very hot. Maybe WrestleMania 6 is even hotter, but this is awesome to see them. And working with British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith, and Dynamite Kid, they are just absolutely just one of the best teams in wrestling history. I think we're getting a masterclass of watching tag team wrestling through their eyes, because we've
100%.
been covering a lot of their stuff here. This match was a little short for my liking, but again, it was a kind of an appetizer, a sneak preview of something probably for the larger audience in the future. But this was fun.
No, and what presence Demolition has on that end, the entrance is everything for them. So I was glued the second I seen the masks and I was pumped, man. And then the match itself delivered. It was short, but it was sweet, and it typical WWF fashion. It ends in a DQ. Surprisingly, it wasn't a 2 out of 3 falls match, because God, we've seen more of those covering Saturday Night's Main Event than we've seen in our lifetime, I think. So good shit though. It was fun. It wasn't the worst thing we've seen on here, and I enjoyed the match. It could have been better. Could have had a couple extra minutes, but it was a fun watch.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think a lot of the moments led up to the hot tag to Davey Boy Smith, and then seeing that kind of there. And I wish we would have gotten a better finish. Of course, they had to put it in a microwave and get it to be done quickly because of but you probably could have cut out the Rick Rude and Coco Beware match that we're going to cover, or the Ted DiBiase Don Morocco match. Like you could have found a way to fit this in, or even, find a way to cut time off to add some time, especially when you're watching two of the most over acts in all of the company right now. Wish they would have got, at the very least, give them 7 minutes instead of 4.5.
Yeah, easily. If we're picking, I would take out the Rick Rude and fucking Coco Beware match, because that did nothing for anybody.
So just to let you guys know, the Bulldogs got hit with Fuji's cane, and the Bulldogs came in with parts of Fuji's cane and beat down Demolition to draw the DQ. So we get all the stuff that happened at ringside added a lot to the finish, but it doesn't age well, and the fans in the arena probably in the moment didn't like it either, because it was just like, I wish we could have got something definitive, because it feels like that's what they were doing with the tag titles. They were getting definitive finishes. Why couldn't we get it here?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So we lead to Ted DiBiase with Virgil taking on Don Morocco with superstar Billy Graham. So apparently the winner of this match will get a title shot in the future, which, I mean, if you're watching this, even in 1988 and 2023, you can realize Don Morocco is not on deck to be the number one contender. So Ted DiBiase was quite evident, especially coming off of the main event of WrestleMania 4. You knew Ted DiBiase was the guy. He was the biggest heel right now in the company, so you knew he was eventually destined to take on Macho Man. But this was a showcase match at this point, where DiBiase, gets it done in a heel fashion, and he finds a way to get the win, and putting his feet on the bottom rope to get the pin. But this is a Ted DiBiase showcase match, and so this is DiBiase continuing having a little steam behind him. Don Morocco, not so much.
Yeah, Don the Rock Morocco, as they kept calling. That threw me off so much during the commentary. He's like, "Oh, the Rock comes back," and I was like, "Motherfucker!" Like, what?
Where's Dwayne?
I was like, I was looking. I was like, "That's not Dwayne. That's Don Morocco, man." But listen, it was for what it was. It wasn't terrible. It was a little lame, but still good. I like DiBiase. He's doing some good work here. Don Morocco looks like a beast, and no way in hell Ted DiBiase should have won over against somebody of that stature. The guy's back looks like a fucking chiseled out mountain.
Do you think, like, when in 1996, when they gave The Rock the moniker The Rock Rocky Maivia, and they like repurposed Don Morocco, do you think, what were the over under odds percentage that Don Morocco thought that he would be completely washed away from history as far as Monaco goes.
Like one of those, like,
ask anybody,
good luck, kid, you know?
I'll let you have it this time. And then it's gone. Like no one, if you ask anybody who The Rock is, nobody's saying Don Morocco. Not one person.
No, I don't even think Meltzer would say it. He'd be like, huh? You mean Dwayne? Dwayne's a good guy. But wild, man. Absolutely wild.
So we go into our main event here, quote unquote, air quotes if you're not listening, not watching, air quotes main event. It's Rick Rude taking on Coco Beware. And I like to see Rick Rude on this roster. We saw the rosters being turned over as we approach 1990. It's 1988, 1989 is the finale of the 80s, and the roster's being turned over to a point where we're seeing the introduction of Rick Rude, the emphasis on Ted DiBiase. Of course, Macho Man's the champ, Ultimate Warrior. This is starting to take shape of this roster that everyone becomes familiar with when we're watching old school WWF. I think the best constructed roster they had during this era probably is 1992 during the Royal Rumble. Is like, that's the final fully realized version of this roster, but we're starting to get the pieces here.
Yeah, no, 100%. I totally agree with you on that.
So this, again, is a showcase match for Rick Rude. Coco winds up being the victim to the Rude Awakening for the quick 3 count, 3 minutes and 42 seconds. And Coco has become, jobber, enhancement talent. And he's very over with the crowd. People love him, but Rick Rude has to get over, brother. And I think he's a great addition to this card. And Rick Rude's a guy, one of those missed opportunities. You mean add him to the list. Owen Hart, Mr. Perfect, Rick Rude, probably in everyone's top 3 of guys that DiBiase will add too. 4 guys that never held the WWF Championship, but should have. So
100%. And it's so crazy to think that DiBiase never got the opportunity, being in the position he is as these episodes were covering. Like, he was right there, man.
It's right there. Grab it, dude. Grab it.
No brass ring for you, Ted.
So, I mean, like I said, during this, I mean, this was a lot of the fallout from WrestleMania was cool. And at this point, the Savage establishing him as champion is important, but I think setting the stage for as we approach WrestleMania 5 is really keeping that seat warm for Hogan eventually. And that's kind of, maybe the fans in the moment thought that. I'm curious to see as we kind of approach that throughout the newsletter to see if that is the overall feeling. Or, I mean, Meltzer said during these episodes where it felt like Macho was the guy. They didn't mention Hogan at all. So that's cool to hear. I hope that continues to be the case because Macho Man deserves all of that praise, but I can't help but assume that it had to feel like a shadow casting over that when Hogan was done with Hollywood filming whatever movie or TV show he was doing, that he was going to take over that throne. And he does WrestleMania 5, he comes back and does kind of take over, which kind of sucks,
No, absolutely. It was good to get a little flavor saver from Macho Man in the meantime.
With that being said, let's get our flavor saver. Let's get to the chaser and pick our favorite parts of these 3 episodes of Saturday Night's Main Event and the main event.
The chaser.
All right, here we are with the chaser. Belcast, let you start. There's 3 episodes to pick from. What was your favorite moment or match that you walked away saying that was the best, man?
Ooh, very, very hard choices. Because I really did dig Hogan and Andre. I think it was amazing. It was really, really well done. Hard not to pick that one, but for the sake of picking something different, I'm going to go with the work rate value of Macho Man Randy Savage versus Ted DiBiase. Thought it was way better of a match, but I mean, the spectacle of Hogan and Andre, no matter how many times it's done, it still leaves you gawking, still leaves you jaw dropped, but you can't put down that work rate between Macho Man and Ted DiBiase. Thought it was beautifully done. Really, really awesome.
Completely agree with you, but I'm going to go Andre Hogan just for the historic reference and just 35 million
great,
people watching and brought people to the table. But I do like that they're moving away from these cartoon character, and Macho Man is that perfect bridge. He's a smaller guy, but he still has he walks in a room, you know who he is. You know what I mean? Like that, you know he's somebody. So as they move towards what this new generation winds up being and reestablishing what a professional wrestler is, and Macho Man was that bridge, and I think everyone needs to give him the credit of that. He's the guy that eventually yields the results of a guy like Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart getting the opportunity to be holding the biggest championship in the company. And it's awesome to see. I think Macho and DiBiase, you said, it's fun to see some work rate on these cards because we've been so void of it for the last 8 episodes. Like there's been here and there, the British Bulldogs going out there, Dynamite Kid just strapping up some tape on his ankles and knees and going out there and going to war. But other than that, it's 3-minute squash matches and Hogan must pose and all that stuff. It's awesome to see Macho Man and DiBiase tearing it up in
Yeah.
the ring, because they're the perfect partnership here. Like, we're dastardly heel versus his underdog, wily, charismatic champion. It's so much fun. And then add Liz to the equation, and add Andre.
100%.
Like, it's so perfect. It's awesome.
No, it was beautifully done. And again, honorable mention to those Andre chops, the Macho Man, because those things
Oh,
were
man.
fucking. I can't think of getting hit by a semi truck, but it's got to feel like getting chopped by Andre the Giant.
Goddamn, yeah. I mean, Andre was one of a kind. As we see him here, I'm watching more Andre in the last couple of weeks than I've ever watched, because like, we're so used
Yeah.
to watching him in those segmented moments, but like, we're seeing him on the day-to-day grind, and he is still a spectacle here. He's used in limited fashion, of course. I think he's on the downside, as we've discussed, but there's still some appeal to. Obviously, he brings eyes to the product. Hogan and Andre, 35 million people watching on NBC. It's a big deal. He still holds name value, and he still today, in a lot of ways, he still has a lot of that name value where casual fans know who he is.
Absolutely, man.
So let's get to closing the tab. Let's preview next week. Let's talk about what's happening here in the tavern and get our weekend started. Let's close the tab.
Closing the tab.
All right, Belcaster, the lights are coming on at the bar. We are here to give our final wrap up, and our next week's show will be episode 9 of season 5, airing on, believe it or not, October 20th. We are flying through spooky season. We're approaching Halloween. We'll be covering 2 episodes of Saturday Night's Main Event. Number 17, October 29th, 1988, from the Baltimore Arena in Baltimore, Maryland, headlined by Hogan versus King Haku. And then we're going to cover Saturday Night's Main Event 18 on November 26th, 1988, from the Arco Arena in Sacramento, California, headlined by Randy Savage versus Andre the Giant for the WWF Championship. The fact that didn't have, I wonder what the rating was that. I know it's a Saturday. It's not the same as Friday. And it's not, you know, Randy Savage and Andre don't have the same history that Hogan and Andre had, but 2 interesting episodes we're going to cover in depth, and we are flying through the season. Next week will mark the halfway point of this season.
Crazy.
It just flies so fast.
Yeah. No, it's wild, man. I couldn't be more stoked, though. I've had such a great time going through all these episodes and just getting more refreshed on the history, because we hear the history, but I mean, how many times have you sat down and watched all these Saturday Night Main Events?
Never.
You know?
This is my first time watching them. Yeah.
Same here. Yeah. So it's awesome to see, especially with the array of characters we go through and how quick time flies with this. I mean, we started off in 85. We're all the way at 88, going to 89. It's insane how quick everything flew by, man. But I'm loving it. It's probably one of my favorite journeys we've done on Shadow Nostalgia so far.
Yeah, it's unique. It's definitely one of those seasons that has its own flavor. ECW had its own flavor. Smoky Mountain Wrestling had its own flavor. WCW and WWF are more the traditional week to week. But looking forward to doing the next season, season 6. We did announce it's going to be NXT Takeover. It's going to be covering those at length. And depending on, we're going to be releasing WCW on audio, and got to talk to the powers that be, the Chads, and see if we can release potentially 2 at one time if we decide to move up the timeline and not wait until mid-July or early June 2024 to start NXT. If we get the itch to get back in the lab and start creating all these moments and talking about it on this platform, I'm down. You know what I mean? Like, I think it would be nice to refresh the batteries and get everything charged up again. But I think you and I are going to get the itch. We've been doing this close to 100 weeks together, back to back, on talking about wrestling, and it's going to feel weird not doing it. But I think we're going to come back better than ever with NXT TakeOver and cover those at length, because it's going to be cool to recover something we watched, like recent. I think we've been covering stuff in the past that we watched through the eyes of a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, whatever. But watching NXT, which I feel like we just watched, and we're going to cover some of the episodes that just aired like last year. There was, I think the last TakeOver was 2020, 2019. So
100%.
Pretty
I'm
damn
excited
cool.
for it, man. I missed a lot of those takeovers. I wasn't a diehard NXT guy, so I know of obviously I know the talent, I know the story behind it, but I am super pumped to jump down that gun too, man. It's gonna be great.
And I won't have to buy any of the hard copy newsletters. Those exist in plentiful. So, all right, let's give our shilling here. What's going on? You guys just had an amazing Fig Night this week. You guys are doing a lot of great things over there, but you want to do some hyping for the @Mike Belcaster on Instagram and all the stuff you got going on.
Yeah, man. I got photos galore popping up. I just got the new Heels and Faces Series 2 featuring Raven, King Kong Bundy, our big boy Andre the Giant, man. These are awesome. You can see me open them on Fig Night, so make sure you check that out. But super happy to be collecting like always, man. It's a hot time to be a collector, and fun stuff. Fig Night's been going great, and obviously my my favorite show of the week. Shot of nostalgia, dude. Rock and rolling is crazy. But yeah, man, I'm at Mike Belcaster on your Instagram. You find me everywhere, dude. And appreciate the love, appreciate the likes on the photos. Just had a nice photo shoot for my daughter's teddy bear's birthday yesterday. So
You gotta do
it was fun, man. You
good
gotta do
stuff.
what you gotta do. She woke up randomly. She's like, it's the guy's birthday. I was like, well, hell yeah, he deserves a photo shoot. Let's do
Love
it.
Making memories, dude. I love it. And
Gotta do it, man.
here, I mean, it's been a busy week for me on the Tavern. I obviously wrestling tonight, but also I was on Brace for Impact. We did Shot Nostalgia, as you guys are watching here, but also on Sunday night, I'm going to be on the debate coming up. This will be, I don't know my number of appearances is, but it's going to be myself, Colton, and Two Bad Chads talking about it. I think at this point we recorded it already, so we have some great topics. I'm bringing an Impact topic to the table. So we're going to be talking about Josh Alexander and what the future holds for the Impact World Championship. If he is to beat Alex Shelley at Bound for Glory, I think everyone can agree he's eventually going to be champion again. And also you guys can go to remarkablewrestling.com for future tickets. We have the Halloween show coming up, so make sure you guys pick those up because there's only 80 tickets available being held in Wisconsin at the Remarkable Wrestling School. We also have some great announcements coming up. We announced Youth of the Nation, what's happening. It's a free show at the White Eagle in Worcester, Massachusetts. So if you're in the area for Festival, that's on 12/28, so end of the year. You are looking to ring in the new year with some great wrestling. We're kicking it off in Worcester, and then it's going to be airing up until bringing in the new year with other amazing promotions. Rad Pro is going to be there. We also have Pizza,
awesome.
ETU, all the great stuff for Festival. And we also have some other great shows being announced here. I can't announce the names of them or the cards, but I shared some information with you, which I'm sure you saw and all that. So we have some great stuff coming up.
Exciting, man.
For December for Remarkable Wrestling. I'll be doing the ring announcing and also, supporting independent wrestling. I'll be, tomorrow I'll be at Hollowed Ground for VPW giving out some Tavern stuff. So if you guys, come up to me, get selling some shirts. I have some 8x10s. I got some stickers. Come say hi to me and support independent wrestling first and foremost because it is the lifeblood of the future. So that's all I got here. But Belcaster, Ventura, lead us out.
Oh my God, we haven't heard the body all night long, man. And let me tell you something, like those rubber checks that Ted DiBiase's throwing around. I have no rubber checks because my finances are in order, much like Shot of Nostalgia right here at the Turnbuckle Tavern. So until next week, stay tuned, Monsoon.